To call our work session, briefing session to order. And the first order of business tonight will be discussion of the agenda.
Mayor and Council. Tonight on your consent agenda, the first item is 4A, or the minutes from the December 19th, 2017 council meeting. Item 4B is a resolution authorizing a one-year renewal of a contract with Siemens Industry for traffic signal maintenance. This was a one-year agreement. This would be a renewal of that for an additional year. It does allow for a 3.2% CPI increase and then an increase due to some increased expenditures for some other work.
Do we know what the other items had?
Yes, sir. Normally we put in 2,500 linear feet of too much conduit, but this year we upped it to 4,000 linear feet so that we could wire two intersections this year for fiber. So that was it.
So it's primarily just a 2-inch conduit?
2-inch conduit.
Okay.
Item 4C is a resolution authorizing a one-year renewal of a contract with Pavement Marking Supply and Installation Services with Action Commercial Services, LLC. This is to install thermoplastic markings and raised button pavement markers at various locations throughout the city on an as-needed basis. Again, this was a one-year contract, and this is a renewal of that contract. There's a slight increase in this contract as well, and that was mainly for additional pavement markers for fire hydrant locations. Item 4D is a resolution authorizing purchase of shade structure for Harrington Park. This is for the baseball fields from We Build Fund Incorporated. This is through a buy board contract. We Build Fund is also the same company that installed the shade structure for the Armstrong Park Amphitheater. And you recall on this one, the Dallas Baseball Association is going to pay $30,000 of this cost, and then we budgeted the remainder within the Innovation Fund. And this will put the shade structures on baseball fields 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the spectator seating. Item 4E is a resolution appointing election judges for the city of Duncanville for the May 5th general election. Every year the Dallas County Elections Department requests that we turn in their survey form, which is due by February 1st, and that includes in that survey our preferences for election judges. So if we do not name our preferences, then Dallas County will appoint the judges. This resolution includes the names of the Duncanville requested election judges.
Can you tell me who the judges are?
Pardon me?
Can you tell me who the judges are?
For early voting judge is Barbara Lewis. And then for election day judges for precinct 3204, the election judge is Evelyn Gray, and the alternate is Patricia Pearson. For 3206 precinct, the election judge is Kate Ham, and the alternate is Sharon Jones. And for precinct 3210, the election judge is Sandra Julian, and the alternate is Millie Williams.
It's the same as last time.
Is that right? Same as last year?
Yes.
Sounds
That's
right.
what I thought.
Did you call all of them to verify?
No, ma'am. That's up to the.
Okay, so you're just saying that's who we approved on,
That's
they
who
haven't
we
said they
approved
want
last
to be
year.
approved?
Yeah, those are the people that we
Did last year?
went with last year, yes. Yes, ma'am. We have to turn this list in by tomorrow in order for the Dallas County Elections Office to have all the information packets ready for the participating cities by the February 1st meeting. Thing is, if we don't turn anything in, we have the issue.
Those are all of the items on the consent agenda. On the regular agenda, item 5A is the public hearing and considering the ordinance amending ordinance 1215 to rename a portion of a public street. This is from Middale Road from North Cedar Ridge to Greenstone to Kathy Self Morgan Way. This is a request from the Duncanville ISD. That request does require a supermajority vote to waive the rules on a resolution, the naming process guidelines, because the entire street is not being renamed. So we'll take a supermajority to waive that guideline and a simple majority to approve the change. Item 5B is a resolution, or is an ordinance amending Article 3, Code of Ethics. This was brought forward back in November. This is brought now as the ordinance change.
Okay, so are we going to go into discussion in here on that, or do you want to do it out there? Because this is, as my understanding was, there wasn't a discussion, that it was just presented and pulled to talk about later.
That's what happened.
So to say there was a discussion, I don't think there was one.
Well, it was on a briefing session. There was some discussion about it, but that was back in November, but there hasn't been a full council since then. So it's whatever the council wishes to do. If you want to pull that, that's fine. Or if you want to discuss it.
We'll discuss it out there if you choose
Well,
to do
I don't,
it.
you know, I don't care
Yeah.
either way, but this is, and so is Dotson going to be here?
No, he's got the flu. He's out.
Well, then maybe we should pull it again until he's back.
Whatever y'all want.
So just table that item.
Yeah. Anybody object to tabling it?
No.
Okay.
Item 5C is a resolution adopting the council retreat final report and your revised capstones, as well as adopting the FY 2018 work plan. Recall that annually, as part of your retreat, you have established your capstones, and then the council adopts those capstones. As part of that, we've also brought the work plan forward, the staff work plan, for adoption. Typically, we do that as part of the budget. This year, we waited until after your retreat so that we could incorporate any changes from the council's capstones into our work plan. Item 5D is the Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan. And recall as well that on this, Regional Emergency Management Coordinator Tanya Hunter briefed this plan. It was at your December meeting, early December meeting, and this is brought forward now for approval. This plan is the Regional Emergency Management Plan for the best Southwest cities for Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Duncanville, and Lancaster. This will move us off of the Dallas County Emergency Management Plan and onto our own specific emergency plan. Emergency Management Plan, as you described before, this is an all-hazards plan. It defines what each city does in a way of addressing emergencies or hazards within our cities and within our communities. So and it outlines the different functions of the different departments in responding to those emergencies. DeSoto and Cedar Hill have already approved those. Is that correct, Tanya? Have approved the plan, and I think Lancaster is considering it this month.
I did at one time on my phone, and then I could not on my iPad open that. And I just wanted to make sure that this is something that the council discusses each time, and then the mayor signs off on it.
Yeah, it's brought before the council first. This is, instead of using the county plan, we're going to use our own plan developed by the four best Southwest cities. Two of them have already signed off on it.
This
Sam,
emergency,
show the size of that plan.
this
It is
emergency
very
management
comprehensive.
Yeah,
plan
I've got
is
a
not-
copy of it.
This
Oh,
emergency
okay.
management plan is not adopted annually. It's adopted, and then if there are some changes to it, then those changes will be brought back to you. But the Dallas County plan The city's been on that plan for how long, Tanya?
1983.
Since 1983, so I think there's probably been some changes to it in that time frame. But this plan is not something that we bring back annually, but it does set, in broad terms, how we will respond to emergencies within our community, within Duncanville. So, and it outlines the responsibilities for those different annexes for evacuation, for emergency notifications, all those different things like that.
So
And
if
what's the
there-
reason for leaving the Dallas plan?
The Dallas County plan does not mention the city of Duncanville or any of the signatories to that plan.
It doesn't
in
mention?
No, sir. So it tells you what the Dallas County Sheriff's Office does, what the Dallas County Fire Marshal's Office, so all of the county departments and how the county responds to disaster, not us for the city of Duncanville. And as it stands right now, we don't have, it does not clearly outline or doesn't outline what our city departments do, what roles and responsibilities the fire department has, the police department, public works, parks, our public information officer, all of our various city departments. As of right now, because we're on the Dallas County plan, they have not been designated on what their role and responsibility in a disaster is. So by developing our own Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan with our partner cities, it outlines all of our city resources in there. It identifies roles and responsibilities and our capabilities to respond.
And is it just the 4 cities?
Yes, sir.
and who was involved in the implementation or the drafting of it, the development of it? Because, I mean, we weren't, our council wasn't.
The emergency management coordinator and the chief, the fire chiefs, police chiefs, all the emergency management personnel were primarily, along with any of the other groups that have pieces of that as well.
When I read it, some of the things I saw that some cities will designate their fire chief is the chief liaison. I think one city designates the assistant manager, assistant city manager, is that right?
So for the emergency management coordinator for all 4 cities, it is the fire chief. That's who they've designated. So each city department has, so I'll give you an example, is communication or warning. How do we provide warning to the community? We have a designated department that handles that, so that's Southwest Regional Communication Center. So in your materials, there should be a sort of a spreadsheet that identifies all the various annexes. If you print out the entire plan, it's larger than a 5-inch binder. It is a very large plan, and we utilize sections of that. So I'll give you an example is winter weather. So we're preparing for winter weather. So we have specific departments that activate portions of our plan to prepare our community for the threat of winter weather, just an example.
And it's not always the same department within each city.
Correct.
That's
That
what
is
I'm
correct.
trying to get at.
But this plan for each city designates which department it is. So of the 4 cities, then it designates that. So it is specific to the 4 cities, whereas the Dallas County one was much more broad, much more general. But also, we need to have an emergency management plan in place because for any kind of grant funding through FEMA, we have to have an approved plan in place. So once this is approved, then we will move off of the Dallas County one.
I just would like to see that, because it is policy, and that's council's, to set policy so that, maybe we would be included in
But
some of the
it
discussion.
is drafted by the various departments, the 4 cities working together. And then it has to come to the council for approval. That's why you had an advanced copy of it. And then, council's got to approve it. So you are the final authority.
So some of the stakeholders that were involved in the planning process were the department heads, city managers, the public information officers, those that have roles and responsibilities for fire, for sheltering. We also work with our partner agencies, also the school district, because they provide transportation resources. So it's really a whole of the community approach as it relates to the various departments, city departments, and our stakeholders and partners that come with us and work with us during a disaster.
Item 5E is the resolution authorizing project management services agreement with Berry, Dunn, McNeil, and Parker. And this is in an amount of $199,920. And this is tied in with the next item, which is the resolution authorizing the purchase of an ERP software system from Tyler Technologies. We briefed you on both of these last meeting and the need for moving into an ERP system on our financials, human resources, software systems, and combining all of those together. The ERP has been budgeted in the Innovation Fund. However, there's no budget for project management services, but after meeting and talking with some other cities and looking at the scope of work of this installation of this project, we feel it is necessary to go forward with a project manager, and that is Barry Dunn. And it would help us stay on track and stay on time, on schedule, and on cost with the implementation of the software system. Item 5G is a resolution approving an amendment to the Duncanville Community Economic Development Corporation bylaws. This was council directed the EDC to look at their bylaws, and they made a change in their bylaws regarding executive session attendance, and that is brought forward to you.
On these bylaws, how long has the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation been in existence?
Since 1995.
Since 95. And they've had the bylaws that they have now before this change since then?
Yes, there's been other changes to
This will be
it along the time, but yes, it's
But I guess what I'm saying is,
But not to that section.
to this section, has it been changed prior to now?
not that specific area.
And what is the
So it-
reason for it? Yeah.
Has something happened to make, for, nearly 20 years, has something happened that now there needs to be a change?
That was the direction that was given from council.
Well, I'm asking council then, what's happened that now there needs to be a change in almost 20 years?
Well, of course, their modus of operation has changed somewhat. There's been a lot of things happened during that period. At one point, not too many years ago, the council terminated the entire 4B board, and since there could be 4 council members serving on the board, they appointed 4 council members to serve and nobody else from the outside. That was one change.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is,
Didn't have anything to do with that.
for the executive session, did it have something to do with
Yeah.
executive? It did?
No, that had anything with that.
No,
Yeah.
no, that
That
didn't
was
have
just-
anything to do with the executive session. It's
Yeah.
just one of the things.
When did Abby come up with that decision?
And I asked for Attorney General's position.
Well, I mean,
Well, there are two AG opinions that were referenced in the footnote of that change. And both of those AG opinions did refer to the governing body, and basically to the standpoint that automatically including people other than the body into that executive session could jeopardize the sanctity of the executive session, I guess, if you will. I think
oh, okay, when did the AG make,
Yeah.
what year did that happen, at the AG?
2004 and 2001.
2004 was the latest
I
one.
run those off for you so you would have them available to you for your discussion.
Okay,
We have
if that AG amendment was done in 2004, so what has happened in the last 13 years that now we need to address it?
I think it's been an evolution. And personally, I've been part of that evolution because I was a council member on the 4B board, and then I was on the 4B board not as a council member. So I can just talk about my personal evolution and seeing it. And what I've noticed is that if council members are there, it tends to be political and not mission oriented, because we are political. We're elected, so we are political.
Okay,
And they're meant to be a mission-oriented board. So for the executive session,
right.
my personal feeling is that it should be free of any political sways.
Okay,
And then the other one is a transparency for all council members. So if some council members, so every council member, the way it is now, before we change it, every council member can go into the executive session. but then they're bound to protect that executive session. So only a district court judge can open the records of that executive session. So if I go into a 4B meeting, executive session, I can't talk to the other council members about what was discussed. That's against the law. So, and no one else can too, only those people that were in that executive session. So that allows for, and that may allow for some undue influence that we would never know about, the other council members would never know about.
Okay, well, I guess my concern is, we're talking about 13 years, and you can say evolution all you want, but the bylaws right now say that they can be there, but they can't vote. So just by their presence, that's going to influence somebody? But for 13 years, it wasn't influencing anybody?
No, oh yes, I think it has. And
Well,
I think
It's
I've
hard to
witnessed
say.
what about when councilmen, I mean, because, you know, I thought, and I guess I don't know what to think, because I'm still trying to figure out why it was necessary for you to go to their meeting and encourage them to make this
No
change.
kidding. That's political.
Yeah, I think that,
That is very political.
Are you talking about me personally?
yeah,
Yes.
one of
So-
the minutes, there's recorded in the minutes that
Yes.
you were there and you suggested
Yes.
that they make
That is
this
political.
change to.
Yes, that is political, and I am political. I was
Okay.
elected.
Yeah,
I
but
am
you
political.
say everybody else is political.
But I wasn't in, no. I
said
am
if they went to the
political,
meeting, it
and
was
we
political.
are political because we are elected. And that is our position. And if we're not being political, we're not doing our job. We are political. They are mission-oriented.
Okay.
They should not be political as much as, you know, we're political people. That, you know, politics is when people come together doing things.
Okay.
But, you know, as much as they can, they should be focused on the mission. So I have to get elected, and there's a lot of politics in that. And so that's going to drive me. But I think a board that's not political should be free of that in certain circumstances. And I think that's one of the reasons why I supported this. So
Okay.
yeah, I was there.
Okay, and that's fine, but I guess when you look at this time frame, it seems like that there's some other reasons that maybe have not been shared to why after 13 years, now all of a sudden, council has influence, because they've had council liaisons for 13 years, haven't
No,
they?
sir.
They have not?
No, sir.
When
No,
did
We
they?
had about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, since Linda
No, not 4 or
Humble.
5. It was, yeah.
Since Linda
It was
Humble.
about 3 years.
And,
About what?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, the year
Okay.
before I came on board. 14.
Okay, well, may I interject something of my own personal feeling about this? I knew nothing about this originally, but my own personal feeling, and I have said it repeatedly over the time I've been in office, we appoint boards and commissions. Anytime we have a presence sitting there, observing that board, we're exerting a certain amount of influence on that board because we're the people that appointed them.
Okay.
So therefore, I have never been in favor of, and especially true when you go into an executive question or session where there are questions asked and briefings given by lawyers. They do not feel
We're not gonna do that.
like,
We get those too.
pardon me, can I finish? They do not feel like, in my opinion, that they can speak as freely. And during open session, it's not bad. I mean, they can speak or not speak, but I believe that you are exerting. I know from my days on Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was on there for several years, that I felt like I was hampered by what I said sometimes when the council people were there.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be controversial, Jessica, Barry, I'm not. But this just doesn't have some clarity and you know, bottom line, some common sense. We are elected officials. And if that's the case, then why do we go through the effort to appoint council members to these boards? Then we don't need to do that.
Well-
I mean, we do one thing and then we do something else, and it seems like we're trying to fit this with this, but this doesn't fit over here. If we went through who do you want? What board do you want to be on? Getting emails. We want you to be on 2 boards. Now all of a sudden, we put us on the board. We're elected officials, like you just said, that appointed them. We appointed them. But it seems that the appointees supersede the elected officials.
I
No,
agree.
sure, because they,
That's my
it
interpretation.
all has, with the exception, I think, of one board, everything they do has to come for us to give the final stamp on it. So you have a chance at that point to object, discuss, whatever you want to do. I was not, I'll
It
tell you,
just-
I was not in favor of
The timing of this is just very,
Reeks.
it just puts a shadow over the, whatever the reason is. But I just wanted to make that point for the record, and we can move on.
And I want to say something too. When you talk about undue influence, I'm getting people telling me on boards that they're on that they feel like some pressure from staff on which way to go. And I don't know because I'm not there and I don't hear it. And so I thought, you know, this is another one. I'd like to hear it. You know, hear what's going on, what's being said. And are they getting pressure from staff? And, you know, it's kind of funny because you're saying just the opposite, that it would be us. And I've just got a question here. Has anybody else gone before a board to testify one way or the other on something?
I,
When?
well, it hasn't been within the last couple of years, but I have on several occasions, because I went as a citizen.
Okay, well,
Even
then,
though, and I don't know how you distinguish between being a councilman and a citizen, but I made it plain that I was there, speaking my own mind about zoning cases and some other stuff.
well, then that was a long time ago.
I will draw a
Well,
distinction
2 years.
between an executive session and going in for an open board that's open, and there are minutes that are being taken, and those minutes are open for anyone to see. We'll draw a distinction between that.
Well, and I guess, you know, back to what, you know, you were saying earlier, Leslie, you know, just as, you know, if we're in the executive session and we discuss it with whomever, they can discuss it as well. And I just don't believe they don't. Maybe not with people outside, but family members. They talk. Don't shake. They talk. Eventually, they talk to somebody about stuff. So it's like a different set of rules, again, that the elected officials
They're
are.
putting themselves at risk and
Well-
jeopardy
well,
for violating Texas
I
law.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But it just seems like there are, this reeks of something else, and I just can't put my hand on it. And that may be because of my being a neophyte to this political realm. But this is, but when you look at these these years, it's something wrong with this. That all of a sudden now, that it's a priority that it has to be changed. But that's it.
I totally agree, and quite frankly, I'll just say straight out, I won't trust this board again, the way this is, because what is going on? We stick cameras everywhere, transparency, transparency. What happened? Where's
That's
the
the other word.
transparency?
The city,
What
the
happened?
city throws out that word that we're so transparent.
Uh-huh. And when I'm
You
talking
can't
to
pick and choose when
citizens,
you're gonna be transparent.
yeah, I've talked to
We
citizens
are.
about it, and
The only
they,
time that we do not televise for our meetings is in an executive session.
that's not what we're talking about. If we're transparent, then what are you hiding from us? Because if it's executive session, and the rule's always been there, we appoint these people, it is gonna come to us, and we don't even get the advantage of hearing what's being presented to them, how it's being presented to them, what the historical background is, anything. We don't get anything. We just get it in front of us, and
If there's something that's being discussed in executive session of the EDC, then it's going to come to you, and more than likely it's going to be an executive session as well, and it will be presented to you as well. So I'm not sure of anything that I can think of that the EDC would be discussing
But
that you wouldn't be.
that's always been the case then. That's always been the case. If they're gonna discuss it, then it's gonna come to us. That was the case before this need, all of a sudden, to change the bylaws.
And it didn't get changed until you found out that that rule was there, because you were telling Dennis Schwartz to leave and he left.
I don't, no, well, and I don't know, and again, I don't know, Dennis served, I guess, the prior year, and I don't know who served the year before then, but because this is my first year, you know, I'm trying not to feel discriminated against, because now all of a sudden that I'm appointed, we have to do this.
Me too, I wasn't on the board.
Well, I'm not, and we're speaking, but, you know, I'm not, she's speaking for Jeanette, I'm speaking for Pat.
Absolutely, I speak for me.
Because, I don't, again, I don't, and I'm gonna let you, you chose not to go, and that's great. And I don't know who was on there before you that was appointed. And everything that everyone is saying, I'm just letting you know, at this point, because all of a sudden now, when I got appointed, or I selected to be on this board,
And me.
then now we feel the need for the change.
I can't tell you for sure, but to my knowledge, prior to setting up the liaison thing, I don't know what happened. But to my knowledge, since we set the liaison up, there's been no council member attend the
Yes, there
executive
has.
session.
Yes, there has.
Who was that? When?
Well, one year, there were 4 council members again. Cliff Boyd, Mark Cooks, Patrick Harvey, and Stan Smith. And they went from the 4B to
They were on the-
the...
that
they were
was
on
the board.
And
Yeah.
we've done that before. We've
Yeah.
appointed council members to the
Yeah,
board.
yeah, they were there, but
And
also...
maybe that's the answer.
And they're...
So
Okay, well then the amendment should have been done after that happened, in my view.
Or you're saying maybe some council people should be on the board?
Yes.
So the distinction,
then-
and that
then
was
there's
my
no
thought
question.
too. The
Well,
distinction
but then they'll be
between
finding out
liaison.
that defeats her argument,
Yeah,
because
no.
they will be finding out information
No.
before the rest of the council will.
No, that-
And so are they supposed to share it with everybody else, or keep it in executive session?
No, they don't share it because it's executive session. But if the whole council agrees that someone should be on, from our council should be on the 4B board, then we all agree that that person can go in executive session.
Did we not all agree that we were on the board?
Well, you're not on the board.
liaison.
I'm not on the board, but as a liaison?
Liaison. So you
Okay.
don't have a voting
And
right.
our rules said that we could go in. Anybody, you could if you showed
That
up.
was before the liaison came about. That was 3 years ago.
No,
These
but you
rules
could,
were before
anybody
that.
could. If all of us showed up, we could go in.
So, you know, and I thought about that. If the council wants someone from the council to be in executive session, then this council needs to put that person on the 4B board. And that.
It's a rules
and
according to
every-
Leslie.
That's the
Okay,
law.
so what?
It's the law.
So
No, it is
what-
not.
What would be the difference of a and maybe this might be for you. What would be the difference of a council member that's on the board being in executive session and a liaison that is a council member being in executive session?
If the Attorney General's opinions reflect that if you're on the board, then you're on the board, you're the governing body of that entity,
Okay.
and you have an inherent right to be in the executive session.
Okay, and as a council member, now you're gonna have influence because you're a city council member, but you're on the board. You see how that?
That defeats your argument.
That's just, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
all.
that- your argument doesn't hold.
But
the
the law
whole-
is, but the law is, if you believe the Attorney General's opinion, if you're on the board, then you're a member of the governing body, members of the governing body have the inherent right to participate in the executive session. If
Okay,
you're not on the board,
Okay.
you don't have that inherent right.
Okay.
Then that
Okay.
right is
I'm
given
good with
to you.
that, I'm good with that,
Wait,
but
wait,
we're here because of the fact that council members that are liaison are influencing by their presence. But a council member that's on the board would not be influencing?
No, they would be influencing with the sanction of the whole council.
But they're a member of the board. So
And they're a
they're
member of the
appointed
board.
and they're supposed to participate and they're supposed to influence one another. That's
And
what-
I did call the Attorney General's office, and I was told that they were not trying to keep council out of executive sessions in 4B.
I don't know who you talk to. All I can do is read their opinions, not talk to somebody on the
Well-
phone and get, you get what you pay for as well, from the lawyer told me, so.
Yeah, because, okay, so now you're telling me, because there are cities that have that the ability to go into executive session on 4Bs. I've already called and checked. So are you saying
I
then
don't know
that they're all in non-compliance with the law?
I don't know what their bylaws are, Ms. Jamison. I don't know what
Well-
their rules are.
No, but I'm asking you a question, if they're allowed
I
in.
can't answer that question. I don't know what other cities do. I only know what, well, I was
So every
asked to
city
do-
you have, they don't get to go in?
Not unless they're a member of the board. I can't think of one.
Capel?
They don't have 4B. They have 4B, but they don't have 4A. And I've never seen a councilman go to a 4B meeting, ever.
Well,
Ever.
we don't usually go.
Joe.
I never went before.
You asked me a question.
Yeah,
I've
and I
gone to
don't know.
4B meetings,
I'll check,
They've never
because-
gone in, as far as I am aware.
I do know that there are some
Well,
cities.
Let me talk about my involvement in this. I got elected in 2015 and was appointed as a liaison that
Okay.
year. So I served that year and the next year as liaison. Cliff Boyd was my predecessor.
Okay.
He was appointed in 14.
Okay.
And I think that might be the first year that they had the liaisons.
Okay.
So we had a meeting, and it was decided they needed to go into executive session. I was just liaison, I just
Right,
came to the
right.
meeting. Our city attorney was here. They said they're going into executive session. I was sitting down by him, just like Richard is. I leaned over and I said, should I go to this? Our city attorney said, I don't think so. He said, I would
Because you
advise-
don't know the rules.
I would advise you not to.
Okay.
That's all I needed to hear.
Okay.
Attorney advised me not to go to the meeting. I said, fine, and I got up and left.
Okay.
And so if the attorney's opinion is that we shouldn't go to those meetings, that's the way I feel.
Okay, and I appreciate that, Dennis, but I didn't get that advice. I showed up at the first meeting, and that's where I was very rudely told that I needed to get out.
Yeah, and I
So,
understand. They said,
yeah.
well, Dennis.
So, and I'm like,
You didn't know why
and
I
then,
left.
did
Yeah.
Cliff go to the?
I don't know.
Okay.
No,
All
no,
right.
no.
So that's what, if our attorney would have gave me that advice me going, I probably wouldn't be, we on the next item.
I was
I'm gonna get an
fortunate
attorney
that the
general's
attorney was
opinion. I'm gonna
was
get it.
sitting here the night of the
Right.
meeting, and I leaned over and
Right,
asked him.
right.
I'm going to get Attorney General's opinion because he
So that's why-
can't get one. See, that's one thing that needs to be clear. He can't get one. You have to be a legislator on a committee, or there's all these definitions of who can get one. He can't get one. And we need to have one because I don't believe that we have been doing something that was not legal for all these years, and then all of a sudden,
That's not what I said, Ms. Jameson, that's not what I said. If you read the opinion, it says that this is a policy issue amongst y'all.
there we go.
The question then is, do I have, because I'm a council member, an inherent right to be there, whether the chairman or the board wants me in there or not? Do I have that right? My answer is no, you don't, because you're not a member of the governing body. But it's certainly within the province of this city council to determine who they may want in there for these meetings for a purpose.
Because it is
It's
a policy
issue.
matter, and we set the
And
policy.
that's what my opinion says.
Because you may at one time get somebody who is rogue and doesn't want you in there.
Now, I will say this to be fair, and to Dennis, especially in this case. When you are a councilman, you only have special powers when you're all are together like you do tonight.
Right.
Otherwise, you are just an appointed citizen that has a title and whatever authority this body gives you to discharge. And they've given you the power to be in executive session under the rules. They have that right to take it away from you as well. So I just want you to understand, you get all the benefits, or you get all the burden but little of the benefit by being an elected official, because now you get all kinds of rules that apply to you under state law and your charter and all that kind of thing, where you're a citizen, you can do whatever you want to when you want. And because the First Amendment says so. So, you know, I'm not trying to keep Patrick out or you out or anybody out. I just want to make sure the rules are clear. This is a debate that you all have had, and you're having it tonight, and that's where it belongs.
But it needs to be
belongs
made
me.
clear that we set the policy.
That's right.
We set the policy.
But you can't change the law. 'Cause
The
you're
law
not-
doesn't say that
It says the govern, if you read the,
Yeah.
it says the
I mean, I
governing
understand-
body,
I
and
understand.
whoever the governing
Right.
body of that entity wants in
And-
the room.
And I wanted to be clear, I understand the interpretation of the law. I'm just trying to
Interpretation.
understand why now? And because of the fact that, I'm taking it in a personal matter, that all of a sudden now.
I understand.
Yeah.
And that's the debate that.
Right.
And that's
Okay.
a fair question for you to ask and a fair question for them to answer, so.
But it is now, because it was just fine until we got a new city
Yeah.
manager and new staff. And then you didn't even know the rule. And so we called the rules up and showed you, and you apologize for not knowing it, and then immediately try to get it changed. So-
No,
I did not. At that point, it was discussed by this body
I was there.
in a work session, in executive session, and it was this body that directed the EDC to go back and look at your bylaws. It was not at my direction, and it was not in my direction that y'all discussed it.
I don't think that we told them to go change them.
You told them to go back and to look at the
But we
bylaws.
had one council person that showed up and testified like they were speaking in behalf of the council.
I would like to address that. I read from this, and my first sentence was, I appear before you in my individual capacity and not, capital N, capital O, capital T, as a representative of the collective council.
But
You still are a council
But,
person.
yeah, and then this influence that the mayor's talking about, they saw you as a councilman. So you're talking about
In
influence.
a public meeting, not in an executive session, one that any council member could have come to, one that any citizen could have come to.
Okay.
Funny how you go
Okay.
across back and forth.
Patrick, I
No,
wouldn't
I'm pretty
think.
consistent.
No,
Well,
you're not.
Mayor, I'm telling you, that's exactly how I'm taking it ever since all this happened, because I've been thinking about this since I got Mr. Hugman's agenda and looking at, and I just wanted to know the time frame. And then all of a sudden, now, my first year, months into being elected, we need to change it.
As I said originally, I didn't know about council people attending the executive session. I thought they did personally. Now, that was my ignorance. But when I heard about it, then I felt that was wrong because of the beliefs that I've had all the way through, that we should not be doing that. And that's where I'm coming
But
from.
they did back
It
when
didn't have
Ken
anything,
Cagle was.
if it didn't Steve or Dennis, it wouldn't make any difference to me when I found out what was going on.
David, this came up with Kent Cagle. And that's how I knew. Because it came up during when Ken Cagle was city manager. The council people went to.
I don't know, I didn't know anything about any of
4B.
it. So,
Now, I never did, but it was, quite frankly, there wasn't, and I look back at some times that I wish I hadn't. Because I did read one time a sentence in some 4B notes about buying that apartment complex that we're talking about and turning it into a Section 8. And I was like, oh my gosh. And you know what I did? I went to Dan Jesperson, a citizen. He got it stopped. Because I feel like that continually, I don't know whether this group doesn't take the authority that you have as a governing body, or it's like we don't do anything about it. And we should. There are things that are slipping away here.
okay, has anybody got anything to say before we go home? We got one other item that we need to get done, it's getting close to time. We've got our opinions about it, and let's just vote on it, that'd be the vote of the governing body. Okay,
H.
H is a resolution approving the tax increment financing district reinvestment zone number 1 annual report. Annually, the TIF zone is required to file an annual report with the state comptroller. The TIF board met and approved the annual report and is coming before the council now. And then item 5I was on the agenda for Councilmember Dodson and Councilmember Thomas to nominate additional members to the Logo Design Advisory Committee. And Dr. Dotson texted me this evening saying he could not make the meeting because he had the flu, but he was nominating Pat Weaver.
City Manager, I'm nominating Ben Carlton.
Ben Carlton.
Okay, those two names. I guess I should bring this up. Dr. Dodson has indicated that he can't serve, but he would like to be the liaison to that board. So.
Do what? That he can't
The
serve?
logo board?
It's
I thought we just discussed that we didn't need liaisons anymore.
No, I said I never was in favor of it. He's requested that, since he can't serve.
Well, then let's put that on the agenda, please, to put,
You do away with liaisons? That's fine.
what's the point of them?
I agree. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay.
We can put that on the discussion line.
Okay. Anything else on that? We can discuss that in another session. So,
Well, he
we
can
don't
put it on
have
the,
to-
no, he can put it on the agenda for the next week because this is.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. We discussed it, we put it on the
Yeah.
agenda and discussed it in another session, but what I need to do is move on.
Free up a lot of time.
well, it's
We've got,
so ridiculous to be on.
we've got a couple of people here from
Because if you read it,
ShotSpotter Technology, so
Mayor and Council, tonight we do have a couple of individuals, Mr. Ron Keachman and Mr. Russ Amberboy from ShotSpotter Technology. And they're here to introduce themselves, so we had an opportunity to meet with them this afternoon. This was, Councilmember Jameson had met with them as the National League of Cities and talked with them, so we asked that this be on. Dale, I'll leave it up to you.
Thank
Russ,
you.
go ahead.
Thank you. Kevin, thank you very much, Mr. President. We appreciate the quick introduction. And as you indicated, we had a brief opportunity to catch up a little bit earlier and make some introductions. I appreciate Mr. Mayor and Council, you guys having us in tonight. Thank you for taking a few minutes with us, allowing us a few minutes to introduce ourselves. My name again is Wes Amberboy. I'm out of Austin, Texas, right down the road. I work for ShotSpotter, which is a Newark, California-based company. I have a colleague, Ron Teachman, that's joining me today. We want to talk a little bit about our company, a little bit about ShotSpotter, gunshot detection, who we are, what we do, and how we do it. And I would comment that this conversation can be a fairly lengthy one, and I've asked Ron to do the nearly impossible, which is condense about an hour-long discussion into about 10 minutes. So there is a lot of meat on the bone, and I'm going to ask Ron to do his best to get us through this as quickly as he can. Ron, thank you.
And by way of introduction, I come to you as a retired law enforcement officer, twice a chief of police, and I installed this solution in both cities where I was a chief. Let me step out of line a little bit and say that I had the pleasure of spending about an hour and a half with the chief and the command staff, as well as the assistant city manager and assistant city manager. And I humbly offer my opinion, you are in good hands with your police department. I travel around the country, meet cops all over the place, and very impressed by the attention and attendance that we're provided here today. Some great questions and insights, and I appreciate that dedication to serving you. That said, let me breeze through this very quickly by way of introduction of what we do. But before I get into the how, a little bit of the why. And we're here because some of you have perceived that there's a gun violence problem in Duncanville. Time doesn't allow us to have a discussion about that as I'd like to hear your perceptions. I've heard from some of you, and I've certainly heard from the police, and they're responsive to the problem. That said, we look at our client base, we've got over 90 cities across the country, and for every murder, there are about 10 non-fatal shootings in the cities that we're involved in, and that's pretty representative of the United States. Moreover, there are 129 on average shooting incidents where a gun is fired and almost 400 rounds fired for every homicide. So the fact we believe that some cities present a low number of homicides only speaks to the tip of the iceberg. We also know, and I'm confident saying in my own experience and talking to my colleague chiefs, speaking to academics, that in every city that has a gun violence problem, it's really just a handful of folks, maybe just a couple, that are driving the violence. Because what they do is purchase a gun, often illegally, or they steal a gun through a burglary or a car theft, and they fire multiple times to get acquainted with the gun, to practice with it, to shoot at stop signs, to practice, intimidate their neighbors, let other gang members, for example, know they have a gun. A lot of shots being fired, but there's a small number of people that drive the violence. And certainly in the city of 38,000 people, that's probably what you have, is just a handful. That said, the problem that police have is they often don't hear the gunshots. In fact, I surveyed the room today with decades of experience, and just a couple of people had a few experiences hearing gunshots, but not locating the shooter. So the police depend on the public to call them. And yet, ironically, and this is the big dilemma, people don't call the police. Good, folks like all of you in this room. And think about the times you heard gunfire. And ask yourself as you're sitting here, did I call the police? No. And if you did, you thought about it for a while, contemplated it, maybe conferred with a spouse or household member, then you called 911 and you had that whole narrative from the call taker to the dispatch. And by the time they dispatched an officer, if they did, several minutes later. Why don't good people like you call? See if any of this relates to you. You weren't sure if what you heard was gunfire. Thought someone else would call closer to the event. Fearful of retaliation because they're going to send a squad car to your house. Or you gave up because you didn't see a squad car last 5 times. These are reasons people tell me in all the cities I go to why we don't call the police. And recently, the federal government did a study. They surveyed people across the country. Were you a victim of a crime? Did you call the police? And as you can see in the graphic, the italicized bold text, that means 40% of firearm victims didn't call. Only 60% reported. And that varies, of course, with sexual assault up to property crime. A lot of people call and report burglary and car theft because you need the insurance report. But they don't call about gunfire. So when someone hears a gunshot here in Duncanville, they expect to look out the window and see a squad car. And why shouldn't they? Cops are omniscient. Watch TV, they solve every crime. But if the folks in Duncanville looking for a squad car don't see it, it's not because your police department's not dedicated and committed. At least not the folks I met today. And I'm sure they speak for the rest of the agency. It's because nobody called. But that person who hears the gunfire expecting a police officer, they think the cops don't care. And that's where the breakdown is, I think, in many cities across our country. And this failure to respond dilutes our community collaboration. It affects the trust relationship. Moreover, people normalize it. Their quality of life is compromised. Don't let kids go out and play after school, keep them inside. Young people think cops don't care because parents and grandparents think cops don't care. They're fertile ground for recruitment in gangs and all these things. Moreover, especially children exposed to trauma like gunfire, vicarious or direct threat, suffer adverse childhood experiences. And this disrupted neurodevelopment, which means the brain is affected by trauma. So this is more than just how many people are shot, how many people are killed. I say all that to say it doesn't have to be like this in Duncanville or any other city. We can help. And we like to be engaged with the police department to build a model of trust beyond what the chief's already doing, which is noble as it is. So having talked quickly about the problem, let me introduce you our solution. Let me take you very quickly through 3 chapters, if you will. The first is detect, then protect, and connect. Under detection, we detect and hear gunfire and locate it accurately. And I'll just take about 3 minutes to show you a quick video that explains how we do what we do.
A gun is fired somewhere. So what happens now? In the past, there was a slim chance the shooting would be reported to police at all. Even when it was, it took precious time, and there was often confusion regarding the location of the shooting and other pertinent information. At least, that's how things were. ShotSpotter has changed all that. By utilizing advanced technology, we have automated the process. We monitor gunfire activity 24/7 throughout the world. Now, if a gun is fired in any area worldwide with ShotSpotter coverage, our system detects, locates, and immediately alerts police of the gunshot. So, how does it work? It starts with sensors. In every area with ShotSpotter coverage, specialized acoustic sensors are placed on buildings or lampposts throughout a neighborhood. If a gun is fired anywhere in the area, multiple sensors detect and timestamp the sound. The precise location of the gunshot is determined based on the amount of time it takes for the sound of the gunshot to travel to each individual sensor. effectively triangulating the sound. The exact location of the detected gunshot is indicated by a dot on a map. That location is derived from a sophisticated set of algorithms using multilateration, time difference of arrival, and triangulation based on arrival calculations to generate math-based intersecting hyperbole. Fortunately, you don't have to worry about that. We do it all for you. Once an alert is generated, it is immediately sent to our IRC, or Incident Review Center, where trained acoustic experts then analyze each incident in mere seconds, determining if the sound is gunfire. SST acoustic analysts receive extensive training on reviewing and classifying gunfire by distinguishing gunfire shots from other impulsive sounds that are not gunshots. In addition, they are trained to append additional contextual information, such as multiple shooter alerts or full automatic weapons alerts, that can prove to be essential tactical intelligence for law enforcement agencies responding to these crimes. The entire transaction takes place in just 30 to 45 seconds. With the real-time ShotSpotter alerts, police can immediately be dispatched to the scene. Utilizing the gunfire audio clip and tactical information, officers can approach an exact location quickly and safely to engage the shooter, interview witnesses, and collect key evidence at the crime scene. ShotSpotter has also launched a new mobile app for anytime access anywhere to gunfire alerts, providing law enforcement the flexibility to receive real-time alerts quickly and effectively without having to be tied to their patrol car or laptop. The ShotSpotter alert system is an invaluable tool in the area of crime fighting, helping make communities safer, as well as reducing risk for police officers.
Math-based intersecting hyperbole. If you don't know what that is, don't despair. I don't either. So let me explain it in a way that I can understand. What's faster, the speed of sound or the speed of light? This video demonstrates what we all learned as children. You see the light, and sometime later you hear the thunder. On a day like today in Duncanville, it would take a gunshot, or any noise, almost 5 seconds to travel a mile. And if we put up sensors on rooftops of buildings, that sound would emanate and hit our sensors at different times, whether it's measured in milliseconds or full seconds. And that time differential, as you just heard, is basically how we do it. There's a lot more math and science behind that, about wind direction and buildings arcing the sound and so forth, but that's fundamentally how it works. Folks in California, listening to the noise is transmitted over cell phone technology. The computer generates a lot of math suggesting gunfire, but it's people, as in addition to your PSAP, your 911 center, that evaluate the noises and then send a message back to your dispatch center, to your officers and their desktops, their laptops, their mobile devices, including their phones and even their watches. And this all happens guaranteed less than 60 seconds, as you heard in the video, more like 30, even sometimes 20. With a high degree of accuracy, that's allowed our clients to have success in reducing and preventing gunfire. That's detect. Protect. We believe we protect police officers, physically and psychologically. I'll run through this very quickly. What's happening in most cities that don't have ShotSpotter, you have a police officer on patrol. You have someone or a couple of people shooting. And then, 1 out of 5 times on average, somebody, some distance away, calls the police with an earshot of the shooting. Where are we sending the squad car? Right through the danger zone. Because we don't know where the danger is. We only know where the where the caller is calling the call taker. Okay? What happens with ShotSpotter is they'll get a distinctive noise, which apparently didn't come through here. It'll cause them to look at their device. They'll hear the gunshots. They'll see this overhead satellite view directing them exactly where the gunfire occurs. And they can push that little blue arrow, hear the noise again, and push the little blue icon and go to Street Google Maps. If there's multiple shooters, full automatic weaponry, or high capacity firearms, the little balloon right there, in this case it's multiple shooter, will give them that information that's appropriate. This is a different incident with 9 rounds, multiple shooter. And as I said, hit the little blue icon, it takes you directly to Street View and Google Maps, so the officer responding can be acquainted with the neighborhood they're going to. Particularly important if it's not the primary officer, a secondary officer, a new cop, somebody's been transferred to a different beat, because not every officer would know all 11 miles of your city. So we want to help them by giving them some navigation.
Won't this deal possibly take him through, go back,
Yes.
won't this deal possibly take him through, how will he know where the shooter is on the street?
That overhead shot would show them, this would get them to where they should park to get out. The overhead view here would tell them, go to where the bubble is, don't go necessarily to the street address. So in this instance in Chicago, we wouldn't go to 1444 West 71st. That's the parcel map address for the computer dispatch system to log the call. The officer would look at that and say, okay, now, I may not be familiar with 71st Street, so I go here, and it takes me to that intersecting way, and I know now where the neighborhood looks like, and I find any building to be my landmark. What we don't want to do, sir, is to be driving down the street, trying to find an address on a doorway and confront the threat. Thank you for your question. So again, phone, watch, tablet. Now, with ShotSpotter, here's that same scenario. Shooter, direct to the threat. All resources going direct to the threat, and if someone does call 911, we can assure them of this response and go talk to them later if necessary. We also protect officers legally as well as your agency. How so? Back to the original scenario. Shooter, caller, and I talked about the time delay of contemplation, calling 911, and now you got to transport the officer to the scene, front porch, front door conversation, 20, 30 minutes later. For the lawyers in the room, what Fourth Amendment right does the officer have should they see someone suspicious back where they came from a half an hour, 45 minutes later? The Fourth Amendment requires proximity and in time and geography to have any authority to confront that threat. Now they can, on a hunch or a guess, approach someone, but they've lost their authority. I respectfully submit. The officer can also look at their screen and look at the last 24 hours activity in the coverage area, so they know what occurred in Duncanville since they last worked yesterday, whether they're going to roll call today or to a secondary job. As long as it's on their phone, they can look at it. They can look at 3 days, or they can look at 7 days. These are just screenshots I took from Chicago. And that's what they would see here. And the chief and his command staff, they can allocate resources scientifically. This is data-driven decision-making. This is legitimate policing. Putting the resources at the place and the time in the day where shots are being fired. This helps us to take shooters off the streets. And as I talked to your police staff earlier today, they're engaged in the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, which is submitting spent shell casings to the ATF for analysis. Much like we do with fingerprints to find out who the person is at a crime scene, we take spent shell casings and that tracks to the gun that the bullet and the casing came from. So closing that chapter out quickly, and I'll end with connect. How do we connect the police to the community? Something that every police chief is agonizing how we do a better job of. It's simply this. When someone looked out their window early in my story and didn't see a squad car, now they see a police car. Now they see the Duncanville police responding to every ShotSpotter alert. And moreover, after the officers do what cops do at crime scenes, arrest bad guys, treat the victims, canvass the neighborhood, talk to people, collect evidence, memorialize that evidence, write their reports. But before they take down yellow tape, before they leave the crime scene, we instruct them in our best practices to knock on a couple of doors and ring doorbells immediately in the area and have a conversation with the folks who were looking out the window previously and not seeing a squad car and saying, very simply, I'm sorry if I woke you. I realize it's now whatever time of the morning, but I'm guessing those gunshots next door woke you. Are you okay? My partner and I are here because we care about you and your family. Children at home? Were your children awakened by the gunfire? Do they need to speak to a police officer that feels safe tonight? I don't want your son or daughter sitting in a bathtub afraid to sleep in their own bed. Don't be alarmed you see flashlights. My partner and I are going to be checking to make sure no one's hiding under your porch, hiding in your car. Check to make sure no stray bullet hit your house or your car. We're not going to leave your property tonight to assure that you and your family are safe. Now, I'm sorry if I woke you again. Oh, forgive me. Let me give you my business card. My name is Ron Teachman. My cell phone number and email address are on the card. I realize we've never met. You're usually sleeping when I'm working the midnight shift here. And I know you may be reluctant to talk to me, concerned about retaliation, but Wes and I are going to be checking the neighborhood, talking to all your neighbors. But maybe you can give me a call and tell me what's happening to that house next door, what's happening on your street, because I can better serve you. I can better protect you if I know what's happening in your neighborhood. And whatever you say to me can be kept confidential. You can be anonymous, but I can be your better guardian if I'm better informed. And with that, let me wish you good night. I hope to hear from you soon. We want to give your chief of police and his staff and his team of officers who want to have that conversation the opportunity. Because right now, all they have is you're calling 911, and frankly, folks, you're not calling. You're thinking right now about all the times you've heard gunshots in this city and you haven't called. So let's change the conversation here and elsewhere. From the police don't care, the police are there. And with that, we'll change the normal. And I thank you for your time and your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to have an executive session before we go into the meeting. So I will adjourn this session at 7:07. I'll ask for the room to be cleared, we'll have an executive session. And as soon as I cut on, our city manager cuts on my light, I can be heard better. But our first order of business tonight will be our invocation, and tonight it will be led by Eddie Thomas from the First Baptist Church. Following that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, so will you please stand?
Good evening, everybody. Honor and glory belongs to the Lord, so I represent Faith Baptist Church, Duncanville. Lord, we just come to you today as humbly as we know how. We thank you for our life. We thank you for your son, and we thank you for the gift that you've given us. We pray over this council today, Lord. We pray that these men make sound decisions, Father, for every person that is in position, Father, that we know that you put them there. And we pray, Lord, that you help these men and police as well to make sound decisions in regards to our city and the greater good of our community. And overall, glory and honor belongs to you. Amen.
Amen. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge the allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I wanted to mention tonight that we have got a big event coming up for the city of Duncanville and the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce. It'll be held this Thursday night at the Hilton Garden Inn, and it's our State of the City address, and where we'll bring everybody up to date on what's been happening through the past year. It will be an award to 2 companies for their outstanding contributions they've made to Duncanville in the last year. And then it will be the Chamber of Commerce. The school board will have a segment of the program where they'll talk about what's been happening at the school district. And then we'll have the chamber part of the program will be their award ceremony and the naming of the man and woman of the year. So it will be a really good night for the city of Duncanville. Now, there are tickets available, but at this date you can contact the Chamber of Commerce for those tickets. Or if you're interested in the State of the City address, it will be posted on our city website. So either way, we would encourage you to go one of those ways and take a look at what's been going on in Duncanville. City Council member reports. Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I've missed the last 2 meetings, and I just want to let you know that my dad passed away, so he went on hospice and then he passed away. And I'd just like to thank the city council and the staff for their support during this time. And he was a giant of a man, and I'll miss him. But anyway, I just wanted to thank y'all for all of the support that y'all have given me during this time.
He was a great man. I knew him, and he was also a pastor. So she is a preacher's kid. City Manager's report.
Mayor and council, I do not have a report tonight.
Item number 2 is proclamation and presentations, and we have a proclamation recognizing Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January the 15th, 2018. We're a little bit late because we canceled our first meeting in January, and we did not get an opportunity to bring this proclamation to you prior to the date. But we want to do that tonight, and we have 2 people here to accept that in Gwen Brown and Mary Faye Cam. So if y'all will come down, I see Mary Faye, I don't see Gwen. Come down, I'll make the presentation. The proclamation reads, whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January the 15th, 1929, dedicated his life to the advancement of civil rights and public service, and whereas Dr. King believed in a nation of freedom and justice for all through nonviolent means, and challenged all citizens to help build a more perfect union and to live up to the purposes and potentials of America. And whereas federal and state legislatures have recognized Dr. King's legacy as one of America's outstanding civil rights leaders by creating a federal holiday marking his birthday, and whereas this federal holiday was signed into law in 1983 and first observed in 1986, making 2018 the 32nd anniversary of the nationwide observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday. And whereas Dr. King's legacy is honored each year on the 3rd Monday in January. Now therefore, I, David L. Green, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim January 15, 2018 is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of Duncanville, and urge all citizens to join me in honoring and remembering Dr. King for his humanitarian values and dedication to make America one nation with equality and justice in all.
And Gwen Brown knew Dr. King. She serves as chairman of our museum, and so we're very proud to have this as an addition to our exhibit for Dr. King. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the citizen input, and I have 3 or 4 cards here, and I would remind you that you have 2 minutes in which to speak. If you'll come forward to the mic and give your name and address for the records, it will be appreciated. Ken Bain.
Ken Bain, 938 Cambridge Drive. First, I want to tell you how much citizen we appreciate y'all serving. I know how it goes. Been there, done that, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we appreciate y'all what you do. I was in the briefing session, and I just heard some comments and discussion, and I'm not going to get into how, what, or where in regard to boards and everything and all, but having served on the board and having been the second president of 4B board after Mr. Smithy back there, I always felt like that it was good for interaction between the boards and the council, because those are who, y'all appoint them, they're the ones that have to give the information to you. They need to know what y'all are thinking directly, I think, in regard to making the decisions and what route they need to follow. And so I just think that, I don't remember we ever had, quote, liaisons or whatever, but we did interact, not from a political point of view of trying to affect them, influence them directly, but just give them where we're coming from and what direction we're looking at going, so that they had some guidance directly between the council and the boards. So that's just my experience, that was helpful. And whatever you decide to do, then that's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wesley Jameson.
Wesley Jameson, 1214 Lady Lane. I agree with the previous speaker. We have a couple of agenda items on here that it looks to me like are designed to restrict access and to reduce transparency between the council, the citizens, and the boards. Attempting to prohibit a council member from consulting or even contacting the city attorney or city tax attorneys is a political move to serve the political motivations of whoever decides to file a complaint against a fellow council member. These changes add to the ambiguity or vagueness of this code, serve no purpose except for the politics of the members who decide that this is the appropriate action to take, which is to file a complaint. Extrapolating interpretations of the code to fit a political agenda, in my opinion, is not the purpose of the Code of Ethics, and in itself is a violation of the code. The other agenda item that we're talking to is also the one just previously mentioned, and that's the relationship between the council and the Economic Development Board. For over 20 years, there's been a set of bylaws in effect, been working very well. It's a policy matter, has nothing to do with law, with Attorney General's opinion. It's strictly a policy matter. So I implore the council to view that policy as one of transparency and to maintain the current openness between the council and the Economic Development Board. And then the final agenda item I want to briefly speak about, I have attended the last 2 TIF board meetings, and already there's over $160,000 that is either on loan or forwarded for, quote, seed money. And I think as citizens we were told that this was going to be a self-supporting entity. And to use the term seed money and everybody else does it and that's common practice or standard procedure, that's not what we were told. We were told it would be a self-supporting entity. So as you consider the annual report, please, I hope there is discussion regarding how it is that we are already 160-something thousand in the hole for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry Gordon.
Barry Gordon, 1751 Crescent Lane. Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, and City Manager, I give you my word that the remarks I'm about to make are my own. I have created them impromptu, without any input, advice, or consideration or counsel with any other individual. The change in the EDC bylaws has created an emotional issue, and it's divisive, and it was not our intent in the EDC. What is paramount in the EDC is our harmonious and unified relationship with the council, and that the council respect the professionalism of the EDC board. In my opinion only, the present composition of the board will not be influenced or intimidated by the presence of a council member, regardless of who that person may be. Whether a future or different composition of the board will be immune to any influence or presence of a council member, I cannot say, but this board is able to professionally and competently conduct business in executive session with a council member present. In that perspective, the relationship of the EDC with council overrides any change in the bylaws. I respectfully implore the council to direct the EDC to re-examine the issue with a focus on having a city that can demonstrate to developers, a council, and an EDC in unity with a harmonious relationship. A divided council vote on this matter would sadden me and not serve a useful purpose in the best interest of this community. Unity and harmony are of paramount importance to me, and I implore the council to remove this issue, table it, or send it back, and let us re-examine this in the EDC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. George Carrera.
Good evening. George Carrera, 418 Wesley Lane. Born and raised in Dallas. Been here since 1999. Neighborhood where I grew up in was a beautiful neighborhood. If you go there today, it's nothing like it was back then. And they say there's three things that are for sure: death, taxes, and change. Change is coming to Duncanville. It's already happening. We've got people moving in here from various places, some good, some not so good. Some of these people have parties throughout the year, several parties, outdoor parties, and not just with a couple of dozen people, but many dozens of people in their backyards. They do quite a bad things. They slaughter animals, baby goats. They have cockfights. The men don't go inside to urinate. They just find a bush or a tree in the backyard somewhere or next to the house and urinate. They get drunk. They get into fights. They're loud. They're hooting and hollering till past 3 in the morning. Next day, there's trash all over the place, and sometimes they don't clean up for several days. Sometimes they don't clean up till the next time they're getting ready to have a party. If you could just imagine the street that you live on, in a few years from now, if nothing is done about this today, this is another problem that is occurring as well. They're putting up fences in the front yards. Some chain link, some wrought iron, some picket fences, and and some with concrete blocks, some with bricks, and it's a mess. So you can imagine Fawn Ridge or whatever street you live on in a few years, and I don't mean maybe 10, maybe even about 5 years, if we don't do anything about it today, how it might look. Another problem is you have several people living in one home, several couples, several families. Imagine your home, in front of your home, having 3 or 4 vehicles parked in front of your house every day. I could say a lot more, but my time is up.
Thank you, sir. Grady Smithy.
Grady W. Smithy, Jr., 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville resident since 1950. 2 things I want to talk to y'all about tonight. Number one is I wish you'd all turn around and take a look at that logo on the wall behind you. And then tell me why you think we need to change that. We've had that logo for 30-some odd years now, and it's been a good one. And frankly, I don't see any need to change. That's the first thing I want to say. And, if you change it, you change it. And, I'm not going to, raise Cain about it, but I just like the logo the way it is, and I especially like the logo having Texas in it. Maybe it's because I'm a Texas kid. We used to say I'm a Texan born, I'm a Texan bred, and when I die, I'm a Texan dead. I know several people in this room would like to see me in that latter category, but still, I'm still alive, and I want to say what I want to say about this thing. Now, secondly, let's talk about the, what we did in the 4B board meeting. First, I got to tell you that I've been on the 4B board 3 times. And this is far and away the best 4B board I've ever been on. It has the most competent people to make decisions on it that I've ever been on. And I got to say that basically we didn't make that decision, because we just thought it up. We made the decision because we had a legal opinion on it. We had a legal opinion from a man who's been a counselor for us for a long time. The 2 years when we didn't have him as a counsel, we made some mistakes that cost us several $100,000. And I have learned, come to know that when he makes a legal opinion, I'm going to pay attention to it, and I hope y'all will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That's all the cards I have tonight for the citizens' input, so we'll go into the consent items. There are A through E, and I'll ask the city secretary if she will read the captions on those.
And I hope you'll bear with me. I've pretty much lost my voice. Item 4A, consider the minutes for the December 19, 2017 City Council regular meeting. 4B, consider a resolution to authorize a one-year renewal of term contract 16-11 traffic signal maintenance services with Siemens Industry, Inc., with a unit price increase attached here to and incorporated herein as Exhibit A, and the estimated expenditure amount of $152,375.85. 4C, consider a resolution to authorize a one-year renewal of term contract 17-15 pavement marking supply and installation services with Action Commercial Services, LLC, attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A, for an estimated expenditure amount of $504. 4D, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase 18-046 shade structure for Harrington Park from We Build Fund, Inc. through Buy Board Purchasing Cooperative Contract 512-16 in the amount of $69,178.71. Item 4E, consider a resolution appointing election judges for the City of Duncanville in Dallas County for the May 5th, 2018 general election, and authorizing the city secretary to approve on behalf of the City of Duncanville any changes in the list of recommended election judges which may become necessary because of the inability to serve of any of the persons named in Exhibit A.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Will you please vote? You might notice that Dr. Dotson is missing tonight. He has the flu, so I'm happy he's not here. Going into the items for individual consideration, the first one is item number 5A, conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending ordinance number 1215 to rename a portion of a public street, namely Middale Road, from its intersection with Greenstone Lane to the point of intersection with North Cedar Ridge Drive at blocks 800 through 1000 of Middale Road to Kathy Self Morgan Way.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, we're just bringing this back before you tonight. And again, just to reiterate the background, back on 17 November, we received the initial request to renew or rename this particular road. We've already sent out the letters to inform the folks that are on this road, which is really the ISD and then one church. But the church has a Cedar Ridge address, and we had no problems from the folks that are abutting the road. Just forwarding, back on the 19th, we presented, which brings us tonight. As we'll talk a little about later, there's some requirements in policy that required more members of the board. Again, this is the location of Kathy Self Morgan Way. As you notice, it is the road, the yellow road just south of the football stadium. The reason why, again, we'll talk about a policy waiver is because we are splitting Middale Road. So only half of it will be Kathy Self Morgan, which is the part of the road west of Cedar Ridge, but the road east of Cedar Ridge will remain Middale Road. A little bit of background, Kathy Self Morgan has had a very successful career coaching the basketball team over at the ISD, and the intent of this is just to honor her achievements. The recommendation that I have for the council, first is to waive Section 3B1 of the policy to allow a continuous street to have two names. In this case, the west of Cedar Ridge would be Kathy Self Morgan Way, and the east side of Cedar Ridge would remain as Middale. That is what requires the 3/4 approval of the city council. And then second, I recommend that the city council amend Exhibit A of the ordinance to change the name of the west side of Middale into Kathy Self Morgan Way. The implementation strategy, again, if it is approved tonight, we will then notify all the property owners along the new portion of the road, which in this case is just the ISD. We'll order the new street signs. You'll notice in March it says to be determined is highlighted. The ISD is wanting to wait till March. I guess it correlates to the end of the basketball season before they make the big announcement and actually change the name in some kind of ceremony. And then following the actual name change, we will then update all the official maps. And then as you see here, this is the example of the signs that you would see, when you're coming up Cedar Road on the main signal. One other thing I'd like to point out is Melissa Cates, the Chief of Staff from the ISD, is here tonight in case anybody has any questions, some of your questions.
Along with one of the trustees.
Along with one of the trustees, yes.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and before the council has any questions, let's go ahead and put a motion on the floor, if you will.
Mayor, the first motion would be to allow there to be a split where you could consider the Kathy Moore, so it would be to grant the waiver as recommended through the language of our director.
And we can't do both of them together?
If you're assured that it'll get the same vote, you might, but I don't know that
I'm
you
not
can be
assured of
assured of that
anything.
same vote. So I don't want to be presumptuous, so let's have two votes.
Okay, that is the first motion that we need to make.
I'll move it if the city attorney will give the language to the city secretary.
We would recommend that you to consider a motion to waive Section 3B1 of the commemorative street naming policy in order to allow contiguous street to have two different names for Middale.
That was a good motion, Dennis. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. This is a public hearing, so we're in the public hearing portion of the meeting. So if anyone would like to speak either for or against this motion, please come forward.
Grady Smithy, 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville, Texas, residence since 1950. I got to say that I'm very impressed with this coach, not just because she's won so many state championships. I was talking to the center on our team a couple of years ago, went to Louisville, big 6'4" girl, very talented, and I was talking to her father last year at one of the ball games, and I asked him, I said, "Has she made the starting lineup yet?" He said, "No, but she made the dean's list." He said, "I'm proud of her for that." Then asked me if she'd made the starting lineup. Now that kind of effort and that's what Kathy Self-Marketing teaches. She teaches people to be good students as well as good basketball players. And I can't think of anything more appropriate than naming this segment of the road after her. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak either for or against this motion? Okay, City Council, you got any questions, comments? Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, technically, you already have a motion on the floor, but if the mayor, or if Dennis and the second would accept the friendly amendment to close the public hearing and approve the motion as read, you could vote on that. Ms.
Okay.
Jameson does as well.
All right. Let's please vote. Okay, thank you very much. Now, where is the second part of this on the agenda?
The second would be to approve ordinance number 2327 as provided, which would rename that portion of the 800 through 1000 block of Middale Road from Middale Road to Kathy Self-Morgan Way, and also amend certain sections of the traffic code to reflect the change in the name for school zone to 20 miles an hour, which is reflected in ordinance 2327.
So
Move to approve.
Yep. Second.
This was sure listed funny on the agenda tonight. I would think there should be two motions. Okay, any further discussion? Motion and second on the floor. If not, please vote. Well, it's down. No, it wasn't down enough. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number B is, 5B is to consider an ordinance amending Article 3, Division 2, Code of Ethics for elected and appointed officials, specifically Section 2-54, Standards of Conduct, and Section 2-55, Additional Standards of Conduct. We discussed this in executive session. It was the feeling of the council that we would like all city council members to be in attendance when we vote this. So, Chair will entertain a motion.
Mayor, just for a point of clarification, you discussed it in work session, not executive session.
Did I say executive session?
Yes, sir.
Pardon me.
And
In work
your
session.
consensus was to postpone this to the next regular meeting. And
Right.
unless someone wants to challenge you, we'll just remove it
That
and
is
postpone
correct.
it and put it
That
on
is
the next
correct.
agenda.
So if there are no challenges, we will table this until the first meeting in February.
Thank you.
Item number C, consider resolution number 2018-010, adopting the 2017 City Council Retreat Final Report as attached hereto as Exhibit A, and adopting the physical 2018 work plan, which attached is hereto as Exhibit B, in establishing capstones.
Mayor, members of council, before you are really kind of two items encapsulated in one. One is accepting the final report from the city council retreat that you held in November. The second is the adoption of the staff work plan for 2018. Just briefly going through, as we go through the strategic planning process, that really starts with your budget. As you start setting kind of the priorities with your budget and having the work sessions and workshops, and getting input. And then taking that obviously to the city council retreat and having then having a discussion and re-examining your capstones, your priorities, objectives to see if those are applicable, if those need to be changed or updated. And then with the final report of the findings from your retreat, from kind of having those discussions, then kind of takes us into the work plan, the staff work plan, the 2018 work plan. Those are the tasks and objectives that you basically are having staff utilizing that plan so that we can adhere to and fulfill those capstones and goals that the council sets. And then, of course, during the year, we report that progress as we're making it throughout for each of those capstones. So just not to go through every single one of them, but the expectations from the retreat is identifying signature things to be done in the next year. Obviously addressing issues that deal with the field house, plan for infrastructure improvement, focus on sales tax generating economic development. Obviously with the comprehensive plan that was just recently adopted, kind of moving forward those plan recommendations from the comp plan itself. Make decisions on a future bond election as we move forward to the year. And then of course resolve the street maintenance funding challenges. And then just strengthen the city organization staff. So when you look at the capstones, and we included in this chart to kind of show the 2016 capstones to the ones that are in your report today, you see that you had 6 of those capstones. It's grown now to 2018 into, well, still 6, but we've combined some. So if you look, for example, Most Engaged Citizens in America, that's continued on to 2018 as we continue to enhance and make improvements and find ways to engage the citizenry of Duncanville. Continue to create high-quality neighborhoods and parks. And then, of course, if you look, for example, I'll point out in 2016, the preservation of historic Main Street, that was then morphed into not just the Main Street preservation, but also just the historic city center, and then continue to look for ways to enhance that. And then, of course, create the multimodal transportation alternatives. One of the other highlights that I'd like to make is in 2016, you had a couple of capstones. One was be the basketball and sports tourism capital of Texas. The other was be the edutainment and recreation capital of Texas. Say that 3 times. Be the youth sports tourism and build a tech-forward community is what the capstones in 2017, from which those morphed. And now we've encapsulated those within the plan, or the council has encapsulated those as part of your retreat discussions into Grow Duncanville, which would include cultural issues, sports, technology. And then another new capstone would become the best practices organization. What things can we do to better improve the organization as a whole? So highlighting some of your top priority capstones under the Create High Neighborhood or High Quality Neighborhoods and Parks. Provide for more effective code enforcement. We've heard that loud and clear from the council as far as direction is concerned. Improve the city's parking ordinance. We've been working with council to date to see if there's ways that we can enhance that through changing the ordinances. Grow Duncanville. So some of the ideas that also came up in the priorities. Develop convention center for Duncanville. Develop new city events that would promote unity and inclusion. Hire an event coordinator, and this just improve overall economic development within the city, enhance those increased sales tax and revenues. And then, of course, we mentioned to preserve the historic Main Street and city center area by supporting economic development on Center Street to Interstate 20, redevelop selected parcels to create a real downtown. And then, of course, contract for the Phase 2 design for Main Street to kind of continue on from the Phase 1 improvements that have already been made. And again, when you look at best practices organization, adopt, best financial ordinance, best practice would be to adopt best practice financial ordinances and include those. So again, as we just kind of talked about the process, you'd go through the council retreat, the final report, work plan and budget. As we begin this new year, we're not about a month or 2 away from beginning the budget process all over again. And of course, we plan to provide updates for the work plan. And that is it. I'll take any questions as far as the final report or the work plan.
Councilwoman Jamison.
I don't really have any questions. I just want to clarify that these items were discussed at the retreat, but I won't be voting for this because there's a lot of things that I didn't agree with, but they were talked about.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have found that if you say that if you vote for something like this, in the future they'll say you voted for it, so you wanted it. No. I don't want it, so I'm not voting. We did talk about it, but there's several items that I don't support, so I won't vote for it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the city manager for this plan, and here's my perspective. I was on the city council about 5 years ago, and it was reactionary. We didn't have plans, and the city council didn't know what to expect until we got our agenda. The citizens didn't know what to expect because there was no plan. And so when I got on but I was used to that. I'm Irish. I can go with it. But when I got on the council this time, the city manager was in place, and he had this in place. But I was used to the old way, and so I remember kind of clashing with him, and then I realized what was going on, and I can attest to the fact that he sticks to the plan. As much as I don't want him to, he sticks to the plan, and that brings stability to Duncanville. And I have seen the results of it. The city council knows ahead of time, and we can research ahead of time, and nothing blindsides us. The citizens know ahead of time. They have a chance to gather their information, gather their support if they have want to put pressure on one way or the other. So I wholeheartedly recommend this as best practices, and I'm so thankful that we have a city manager that is instituting it in Duncanville, and I pray that it continues in the future.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else? Motion?
I move that we accept this report and the work plan for the next year.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5D is to consider a resolution authorizing the mayor to review and approve the Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan from the city of Duncanville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tanya Hunter. I'm the Regional Emergency Management Operations Coordinator for Cedar Hill, Duncanville, DeSoto, and Lancaster. I was hired back in 2016 as a program manager for emergency management for all 4 communities. At that time, we had, out of the 4 communities, we had 3 individual emergency management plans, which means we really didn't know what our neighbors were doing as it relates to emergency response or disaster. Currently, the city of Duncanville is on the Dallas County Emergency Management Plan and has been since 1983. So what I would like to do for you is to sort of provide you an overview about what the emergency management plan is. Again, we've been on the plan for Dallas County since 1983. It does not depict or explain what our roles and responsibilities as local government. It really outlines county government and their response. As objectives for our emergency management plan is for life safety, property, preservation, and protection of the environment. That's really the goal for our emergency management plan. Really outlines in our plan the roles and responsibilities of our city government, all of our city departments, and their role in a disaster. We plan training and exercise with our city departments to make sure that we're efficient in our emergency and disaster response. Also in the planning process, we plan with, of course, our department directors and the department managers on what their roles and responsibilities are during an emergency or disaster. And then we also work with our voluntary organizations such as the American Red Cross, Salvation Army. There's many organizations that we partner with during a disaster to assist our residents during a disaster. So back on December the 5th, I provided a briefing to Mayor and Council regarding the emergency management plan. Before you should have a handout that outlines roles and responsibilities for each of the 4 cities and the departments, and what is the outline for each of the annexes. If you print out the emergency management plan, is a rather large document. It's about a 5-inch binder, so we activate portions of our emergency management plan depending on the type of disaster. So an example would be, okay, we just experienced some winter weather, as we have department roles and responsibilities outlined for roles and responsibilities for specific hazards. So the goal would be, once we have a plan that's in place for the city of Duncanville, that we'll work with Dallas County to transition from the Dallas County plan, and we'll have our own plan. Inside the plan, it talks about, again, roles and responsibilities, but also talks about our resources as a community and what we have available to us through our own resources, our neighbors' resources, so that's Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and Lancaster's resources. It also outlines mutual aid resources and what agreements each of the cities have as it relates to emergency response. In the plan, it also outlines the disaster declaration process. So if we experience a catastrophic event in Duncanville, what the process is for disaster declaration, and then we communicate the disaster damages, casualties, fatalities to Dallas County. We request any resources still through Dallas County. And then if Dallas County has those resources, they will provide those to us. If it's above and beyond what Dallas County can provide, they'll make that request on our behalf to the state of Texas through our Disaster District Committee in Garland, which is the DPS office in Garland, which is sort of the keeper of the state resources for Region 1. So you have the handout that really outlines annexes A through V. So it talks a little bit about roles and responsibilities for how we provide warning to the community, how we communicate during a disaster, mass care and sheltering on how we do that, and what statements of agreement we have with the American Red Cross to shelter within our community. So you can sort of go down the list through your handout to sort of see what the department's roles and responsibilities are for each of those annexes. And really, my coming to you today is to allow for the mayor to be able to sign this document. In December, I briefed the mayor and council for the cities of Cedar Hill and DeSoto. So the plan has been signed by both of those mayors. And once the city of Duncanville has signed, then we'll go forth and brief the mayor and council for the city of Lancaster.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion regarding this, and we discuss it.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion.
Tanya, I pride myself on reading everything in the agenda before the meeting, but I've got to admit, I did not read your entire plan. I'm awed that you wrote all of that in the length of time that you've been here.
Yeah, it's been a planning process of about 18 months, going and working with each of the departments for 4 communities. So identifying roles and responsibilities for law enforcement and for fire and for dispatch, and a lot of our other response organizations like Public Works and Parks and other departments. So I appreciate that. Really, once we get the city of Lancaster to sign, and once the city of Duncanville signs, then we'll be providing and doing the distribution to about 350 stakeholders across 4 cities on a thumb drive. So each of you will have a copy of our Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan, so you really understand roles and responsibilities of mayor and council as it relates to disaster declaration.
Anyone that looks at this, if you print it out, it's really thick. It's quite a manual. One question I have, and we're divorcing ourselves, I suppose, from the county plan. Are there any ties back to that? And an example I want to ask about specifically in light of the weather we're having. I know in the past, if we ran out of sand to put down, ice sand to put down in an ice storm, we always had the ability to get into the county stockpile of sand. Are we limited to just the 4 cities, or can we still get to the county?
That's a great question. So Chapter 418 of the Texas Government Code, us as local government, we have the ability, if we run out of a resource, doesn't matter what that resource is, that we can request that through Dallas County. So us being a part of the plan or not part of the plan, Chapter 418 outlines the resource request process during an emergency or disaster to make the request to Dallas County. They'll check their resources to see if they have the resource available. If they don't have the resource available, they will sort of push that to the state in TxDOT, for your example. So let's say if the county depleted their stockpile and they didn't have the resource that we needed, they would make the request through the state. TxDOT sits on that in their emergency operations center in Garland to support us as local government. So doesn't matter really what the resource is. Again, that resource request, doesn't matter whose plan we're on. So really the goal for us is to have our own plan. So we outline what our city department's roles are and then what our resources are. And now we're sort of multiplying that times 4. So now we see what our neighbors have, what resources they have. So we're tapping into that, our local resources first, and then we're going to our mutual aid resources. So that would be the Dallas County Mutual Aid System, or the EDUCT agreement, which is the Ellis Dallas Unified Cooperative, which is cities in southern Dallas County and northern Ellis County, bring a lot of resources if we invoke those or activate those mutual aid agreements. So as a part of the plan, it outlines all of our resources, again, for 4 cities, and then what our mutual aid agreements are for 4 cities, which is gives us a lot of clarity and visibility during a disaster on what resources we have accessibility to. Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Thank you, Mayor. So we were told that we needed to hire an emergency management coordinator to do a plan, but I had no idea that it would be this extensive. It was a great job for the amount of time that you've had to do it. My question is, Wilmer and Hutchins, is there any talk of bringing them in or at any point, or because they're kind of like on the other side of Lancaster and the growth there is booming? So is there any talk right now, or is there any room to bring them in?
We have not extended an offer to invite other municipalities to be a part of our interlocal agreement. The City of Hutchins did hire just a brand new fire chief and emergency management coordinator. He has a lot of wealth and knowledge as it relates to emergency management. And I do closely work with the Wilmer emergency manager, which is the fire chief, and I see him regularly at Dallas County Emergency Managers meetings. So we have a lot of neighbors, and we have a lot of interlocal agreements to provide automatic aid and mutual aid support during a disaster. So I'm sure that a lot of our neighbors are seeing what's happening with the best Southwest cities, and I'm sure that there'll be some discussions had in the future about
Yeah,
it.
because I'm thinking in a disaster, we just won't leave them orphans. We'll have to bring them in because they're on our side of town.
Correct. So they would make the request through mutual aid for our resources, and if they've exhausted the mutual aid resources, they'd go to the county, just as we would for any resources that they couldn't get through mutual aid if the county had it. So
thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Jameson?
I wonder if you would please explain to the taxpayers why we would want to break away from Dallas County and have our own.
That's a great question. So the current plan, as it states for Dallas County, outlines the roles and responsibilities of county departments. So what the Dallas County Sheriff's Office does, the county fire marshal, the county auditor, the county district attorney, on what they do during an emergency or disaster. It does not explain or depict roles and responsibilities as local government for the cities that are signed on to the county plan. So in my opinion, there is no benefit of being on that plan other than being eligible for some grants because they are considered at the advanced level preparedness. For us to be prepared as a community for disasters, we really need to have our own plan, train to the plan, and exercise to the plan. We do regular exercises on the second Thursday of the month in our Emergency Operations Center. So we do bring department heads, we bring our community emergency response team, the Chamber of Commerce, the school district, and our voluntary organizations to go through scenarios, both discussion-based and operations-based, to make sure that we're testing our plans and that we have the resources that we need to be successful during a disaster.
And so at what point do you think we'll be eligible for grants?
As soon as this document is signed, we will be eligible. We'll be considered advanced. The state has already reviewed our plan and state that it's at the advanced level preparedness. So once this plan is signed and the resolution is signed by the mayor, we'll provide that to Dallas County. They will make that a commissioner to court agenda item to transition us from the Dallas County plan to our own Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan. So both the court order and the resolution will then go to the state for approval, and then they will show us having our own plan.
So the eligibility for grants is not based on like the number of citizens or area or?
No, ma'am. The grants specifically that I'm speaking about are state Homeland Security grants. That allows for us as municipalities. I'll give an example. We have a SWAT working group in our region. We have a SWAT team. So there have been identified needs as it relates to SWAT teams in our region. So by having an advanced level preparedness plan that allows for our SWAT team in the police department to have access to these grant funds to be able to meet the needs or the gaps or shortfalls that they may have within the police department.
Can you share with me, what's the cost to Duncanville if we leave Dallas, and is there a benefit cost-wise for doing this?
There is no cost. So the county, through an interlocal agreement with the municipalities that don't currently have a plan, that allows for those jurisdictions to basically check that box that they do have a plan. There's really no benefit other than just saying that they're a part of a plan. They're not really a part of the plan because they don't have a local plan that outlines their roles and responsibilities during a disaster. You would hope that a community having a plan knows, so all the city departments know what their role is during a disaster, and again, they're training and exercising for that day, when that day may come. So there is no cost for us to be on the plan or be off the plan. The benefit is, as a community, we're more prepared because we have those established relationships with our own city departments as well as our partner agencies.
So if there's no cost, then what's the benefit or the necessity for the grant funding?
So the grant funding, the benefit would be if we have an advanced level preparedness plan that allows for the city of Duncanville to be have the ability to access state homeland security grant dollars. Those are no match grants. So I'll just give an example again with the police department is with the SWAT working group is through regional exercises they've identified the need for ballistic shields or ballistic vests or night vision capability. If they don't have that money budgeted for those items, that is a benefit to having an advanced level preparedness plan like the Southwest Regional Emergency Management Plan to then be able to receive these grant funds or receive these permanent loaned items that a jurisdiction would pay for through grant funding, and that would be sort of bridging that gap so we have some capability as it relates to law enforcement operations.
So with the scenario you just used, if there's a need for the vests, we don't have time to write a grant to get the vests. Is that, I mean, we're going to need them, correct?
So the items that there's been a survey through the North Central Texas Council of Governments for the SWAT working groups. There's just an example on law enforcement agencies and what their needs are and standardizing those needs because there are lots of vendors out there and that particular resource is not standardized. So having a standardized protocol or a standardized resource and then using state homeland security grant funding to provide those resources to our law enforcement agencies in our region to include the city of Duncanville.
Councilwoman Jameson?
Are you saying the vests are not standardized?
No, ma'am. I'm just saying I'm just saying resources in general are not standardized. Like communications is not standardized. Night vision capability is not standardized. So the goal is if you're going to have other law enforcement agencies that are working together is to standardize. Same thing on fire is you want to standardize things. So when your neighbors come in and they have the same thing, it makes it easier during the response.
I just wondered because I'd seen a program about there being a problem with one of the vendors who provided those vests. I think it was military, and that bullets were getting through.
I saw that same.
I know what I'm
same
thinking.
thing. Well, what it said was that there are all kind of vests out there, and we bought, I guess, what we felt was the best on the market at the time. But some of the vests will not stop an armor-piercing bullet, and now they've got some upgraded. Is that right, Chief? They've got some upgraded vests now.
Yeah, and more specifically, ballistic shields. If you think about what happened on July 7th in the city of Dallas, you know, having some standardized resources that relates to law enforcement. So when you're bringing in other law enforcement agencies to come help you, that you have some resources that are the same.
So the vests have improved?
I'll leave that to Chief Brown to answer that question. That's not an emergency management question.
The vests have improved, the bulletproof vests?
The technology that relates to that.
Did you answer my question? Did they improve? No, not approved. Improved. Because remember there was a problem with them and the bullets were piercing through the vests.
Yes, ma'am. We are not using that.
Okay. Thank you.
One comment I have, I want people to know what your position was during Hurricane Harvey. You received quite an honor to do what you did. Tell us what that was.
Thank you. The city of Duncanville, along with Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and Lancaster, we partnered together to assist with opening up a hurricane shelter at the Ellis Davis Fieldhouse. So during Hurricane Harvey, when the hurricane came on shore, it was on shore for 4 days, dropped 54 inches of rain. The state quickly realized that there may be a tremendous need to shelter in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, specifically in the city of Dallas. So the state asked the city of Dallas to shelter up to 5,000 people. So what they did is they took our resources from the Ellis Davis Fieldhouse, which the city of Duncanville supports, as well as the Lowe's Fieldhouse in Addison, and that's a cooperative agreement with Addison, Farmers Branch, Carrollton, and Richardson. They took their resources and compiled them with our resources to create the K. Bailey Hutchison Convention Center mega shelter. So during the mega shelter, I served as the Emergency Management Operations Coordinator, or the EOC manager for the city of Dallas. Their resources in emergency management were taxed as many days as they were sheltering, so I sort of served as the manager of the Emergency Operations Center for the city of Dallas for most of the activation. Started roughly around August the 23rd through, I think it was around September 15th. So I'm working multiple operational shifts there, coordinating influx of the planes that were coming in and buses that were coming in of evacuees from all over Texas to be sheltered in the Dallas area. So we worked a lot closely with partner agencies like the Red Cross and others to shelter both in Dallas and Irving and in Fort Worth. So a lot of coordination both at our regional level, at state level, as it relates to taking care of our fellow Texans. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I understand you did a fantastic job.
Thank
so we thank you for that. For people that don't understand, we're talking about Tanya's role. She's hired by all 4 of the best Southwest cities, but she has to be paid by somebody. So she's on Duncanville's payroll, but the other 3 cities split the cost with us on it. So that's how you operate. Further questions? Do we have a motion on the floor? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. So if there are no further questions, will you please?
I'll make a motion because the city attorney's shaking his head.
I don't recall.
So I move that we approve.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. So will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Item number E is to consider a resolution authorizing a project management services agreed with Berry, Dunn, McNeil, and Parker, LLC, through the Texas Department of Information Resources contract number DIR-TSO-3956 in the estimated amount of $199,920.
Mayor, members of council, I've got a presentation that'll kind of encompass both agenda item E and agenda item F, and it's a shorter version of the briefing that you received at your December meeting. But just as we go through, to start off with, so we are asking for recommending approval for both a consultant to help us through our ERP transition process. So why are we going through the process to begin with of going to a new software? The current software that we're using has been in place since 1995. The issue that we've also had with it is, of course, the upgrades are costly. They're not efficient with what we're doing right now. And again, it's a software that wasn't necessarily designed for municipal capabilities. Again, it also has created multiple silos within the city organization itself. So when you go through the budget planning process, you create it on one software, and then you have to transfer it to another software. That's inefficient by itself. That's just one example of the inefficiencies. And so it also is a very big challenge for us when we're integrating with other software systems that we have throughout the city. So this graph kind of encompasses what the issues are that we have. So you As you see, as part of the grant, we have, we're using, in essence, 7 different type of software programs as part of the ERP, and we hope to bring all those into one ERP program. Secure, which is our AP checks, our combined annual financial report software, people admin for our database for people that are applying, M-Budget is what we use to create the budget. Banner is our accounting ledger software program. We also have then a separate program for just our assets, for tracking our assets for the city. Of course, the glue that will sometimes hold all that together is the good old-fashioned Microsoft Excel, which you do not want to rely on too much. Again, the ultimate goal is to replace the numerous aging and disparately functioning limited software with a new software that can not only bring in those functions and help us with both the accounting, the purchasing processes and human resources, but you also want it to be able to grow. So if other, softwares need to be added to help us with utility billing, municipal court, perhaps building software, we can do that using the Tyler Munis that we'll show here in a minute to recommend. Again, this just is a graph that shows you all these different type of functions that we're trying to bring in under one roof, and that's just good business practice. And so the selection criteria, just briefly, prior experience with a vendor, or what kind of references did we receive? As I mentioned before, we did visit at least a couple of cities that had gone into using the Tyler program to see what lessons learned they had. The modules need to be at least somehow customizable for us, for our organization. And again, do you have a large market share in the state? That's the issue with Banner. Not very many organizations are using Banner. They have a very small network as far as municipalities are concerned. And then also just the suitability of adding more modules. And is it user-friendly? It needs to be intuitive. You don't want to scare staff when you're trying to train something that would require them to read a manual like our emergency preparedness manual. You'd want them to be able to get in there, learn the program, and embrace it and use it as it's supposed to be used. So we did look at a number of different softwares and vendors out there, and again came up with the recommendation for the Tyler software. Tyler is one of the largest companies that offer municipal software, accounting software that we identified, a very competitive price. Their retention rate is outstanding. And then again, using the purchasing cooperative, again, they bring economies of scale and they go out and do the purchasing process for municipalities. So then why do we need someone to come in and help us? Because it's going to be a very arduous and time-consuming process beyond the regular duties that we have as staff. As I mentioned at the meeting last month in December, we're already down one staff member just for the finance. And so when you have a very limited staff that's trying to juggle the current balls that they have going on, they're actually in the middle of an audit right now. We'll be getting the budget process here soon, and then you're adding on top of transitioning from those 7 different softwares into a new ERP on top of what's happening. You do not want to make the mistake of taking what our current software is now and transitioning it to new software. That will be costly, especially when I show you the graph that shows the time frame that we're trying to keep or moving forward with. So we recommend bringing in a software or a consultant that would help us do that transition. Would be basically a full-time staff member that would be helping oversee that part of the project with Tyler. And that was one of the things that one of the lessons learned when we went, speaking of best practices, that we went and visited other cities. That was their recommendation. One city did not use one and told us it was a mistake that they did, and one said they did, and it, at least was able to help them regarding the complexity of moving forward with the ERP project. So again, as I mentioned, they'll help manage the project schedule. Why that's important, because we have a tight project schedule. We have a go-live date for our financials for October 1, our HR for January 1. And why that's important is because if we go over those time limits, we will have to pay more to keep the Tyler staff on board to complete the project. And so they're going to make sure that Tyler's performing what they need to make sure that we're providing the information, the correct information that they need to have to continue this project as we try to race and meet that deadline. And again, October 1 is because we want to be able to meet that's synonymous with the adoption of the budget. So we want to be able to transition that software, and we'll still have to do dual software beyond that, just to make sure that we have everything that's being accounted for on our finances. They have experienced merging financial policy adaptations, because this will force us to go back and look at best practices for our finances. Are there going to be certain things as we transition to Tyler that we can do better? That's going to cause some, us looking introspectively as a city to see if there's better things that we can be doing when it comes to making that transition. Helping us track action items, escalating and resolving project concerns, and then coordinating those city resources. Again, something that they're going to assist us doing across the departmental lines. Why that's going to be important is because we'll be going across city boundary or to other departments. And what I mean by that is they will all have parts of this, that they will be diversifying that into the departments as far as purchasing processes are concerned, HR, accounting, and so forth, and not having a centralized point, but letting the departments go in there and be part of that umbrella of the ERP. Again, they'll be reviewing the Tyler technology deliverables. We actually had them review the Tyler contract and made some recommendations for changes to the Tyler contract for us. Again, as I mentioned, the key point here is to reduce the risk of project extension. That's the clock that we're racing against. Barry Dunn actually has a very good reputation dealing, especially when we talk about the ERP and dealing with Tyler specifically. They have staff members that are either former municipal financial personnel and or that have worked with Tyler or been on the Tyler staff before. So part of it was make sure we're getting the right project implementation team from Tyler, and that we're getting the best that we can from them, and not somebody that has never gone through this process before. As we mentioned before, the cost of having those different software programs, annual maintenance totals $112,000 on a yearly basis. By going to the one ERP and condensing that to one, the maintenance cost is $39,000. We have annual savings of $72,000 by reducing that software into one, or those 6 different softwares into one ERP. The cost, again, the cost for the Tyler software program is $415,000, and then the Barry Dunn project management consultant process price is $199,000. I mentioned the project schedule. Again, you'll see that we have a go live date for the finance and purchasing components, which includes the asset management as well. October 1 go live, and then for human resources to go live by January 1. And I'll be happy to take more any questions.
I've got 2 or 3 comments to make from the previous presentations. Well, we've got about 6 different systems we're operating off of.
Yes, sir.
7? 6
well, yeah, we have 6 different softwares. I include Microsoft because Microsoft is kind of that crutch when the softwares are not delivering certain facets. So you have to create a Microsoft spreadsheet in essence to kind of be that bridge to maybe another software or whatever. I mean, that's what it's used for. And so what we're saying is we're wanting to eliminate 6 different softwares that we're using now for the various programs. Yes, sir.
And how long have we had Banner?
Banner since 1995.
And I understand that we've had problems because it's costing more and more for them to keep the thing running. Is that correct? I'm not on the finance committee.
Isn't it like $40,000 every time you want to
Well,
upgrade it?
there's 2 parts of it because you have to pay for the maintenance cost for Banner, which is about $40,000, but then you also have to pay for an Oracle license that goes along with that. So the total cost, apologize, going through this quick. The total cost is $93,196 yearly annual cost just for the Banner, to run the Banner program.
In this way, we're going to integrate all of our various departments into one system.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to save all of these entries that you've got to make system by
That's right.
system.
That's correct.
And that also would eliminate a whole heck of a lot of mistakes that you could make in just data entry.
That is exactly.
Because it's all going to be coordinated.
Right. Eliminating mistakes, again, training. I did not mention training. Training is going to be an extremely valuable component of this. Tyler and Barry Dunn are going to be responsible for making sure all of our staff throughout all the departments are going to be utilizing this are fully trained, because that's going to be pushed back on the departments to provide, do that input, again, on purchasing or again, the financials, budget preparation. And then again, the transition from the budget or having it in one consolidated software. Again, right now, as I think I joked at the last meeting when I was trained by Tia, and Tia she'll attest I'm probably the worst student that she had as far as looking at going from with the M-budget software, so you data input that, but then you got to go data input that to the banner, and then you have to go back and forth to go check on encumbrances and so forth. I'm just using it as an example, but that's not how it should be.
Right. And so hiring the consultant, you say, well, why couldn't our staff do it? But hiring the consultant who knows this system, who knows how the conversion process goes, and who's going to monitor it.
Right.
And we don't have staff that can do that and do the normal operations. Or
Staff will be busy enough just going through all the all the work items and tasks and everything else that's going to be going along with the transition. So their main job is going to be making sure that they're getting all the inputs to Tyler, or so that they can make that, in essence, transfer and transition that information from the current software system into the new ERP.
And the other thing your consultant's going to be doing, he's going to be monitoring the implementation of the system to make sure that you're on track at the appropriate time. If you don't, then there's additional charges that can be made.
Yes, sir.
Because you're not on time.
Yes, sir. They are our insurance policy, in essence, to make sure that we don't go over that time frame.
And knowing all of that, you're going to have to run a parallel system for a period of time, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Before you actually accept
Before we go, exactly.
the new Tyler system and go forward.
Yes, sir.
I think all of those are very important. It's going to give you a lot more efficiency, and you certainly cannot continue with what you got with Banner. I mean, that doesn't make good sense. That's the plain English that I can understand.
Well said.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Mayor, I'd like to move to authorize project management service for $199,920 and the purchase of the electronic resource planning ERP software system.
We've combined E and F together. Is that all right, City Attorney?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Will you please vote? Thank you very much. Item number G is to consider a resolution approving an amendment to the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation bylaws by amending Article 4, Functional Corporate Duties and Requirements, Section 4, Participation in Board Meetings.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. Just a real quick recap in terms of dates and the timeline. On September 19th, that's when the council gave the board direction. The board, after that, did meet with the city attorney and received a legal opinion. And then on December 14th, 2017, the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation Board unanimously approved amending the bylaws. The current bylaws, as you can see, in terms of the amendment, the current bylaws address who can attend the executive sessions. The proposed bylaw states that those people other than board members would have to be specifically invited into the executive session to attend. And then down there below, you can see where the footnote is citing the different law from our legal opinion.
Okay. Is there a motion concerning this?
Mayor and council, since there was such a robust debate about this item, there's 4 motions which you could possibly consider: a motion to approve, motion to deny, a motion to postpone until you have a full board, or a motion, I think it was suggested by one of the citizens, to refer back to the DCEDC for reconsideration. So those are your 4 possible motions. Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas, I'll get the right line.
Yes, Mayor, I move that we refer this back to the EDC. I'd like to respect the president's request. He's the president of that board, and so that's what I would like to do. So I move it.
Motion and a second on the floor. My comments is that I would have been prepared to vote for this, but in light of the statements made by the chairman, I think it would be appropriate because I have high respect for that board. Any further comment?
For a point of clarification, the motion would be to refer back to the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation for reconsideration, the amendment as reflected regarding Article 4, Section 4, correct?
It is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion, and was there a second on that motion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Okay, thank you very much. Item number H is to consider a resolution approving the tax increment financing TIF District Reinvestment Zone Number 1 2017 Annual Report.
Thank you again, Honorable Mayor and Council. Every year, as the city manager spoke to you earlier about in the briefing session, every year by state law, the TIF does have to file an annual report with the state comptroller's office by the 150th day following the end of the municipal fiscal year, so we fall within that deadline. Mr. Larry Klein, which you all have met, has been our TIF consultant since the creation of the TIF, and he's here this evening to go over the annual report that he's put together, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So with that.
Larry Klein from Richardson, Texas, Mayor, members of the council. This annual report, let's see.
You can just go through it. They have a copy of it.
Oh, they got it, okay. Follows information provided by city staff and put into a format that I've used for annual reports in other cities. Beginning with the index page that lists the information that is in the report. The next page is a summary of the TIF board meetings and their actions during the reporting period, and the reporting period for this one is beginning December 20th, 2016, which is when the TIF was created, up to the end of September of 2017, the end of the city's fiscal year. So this page outlines the TIF board meetings and actions during that period of time, and also the council meetings and their actions during that period. The next page talks about the public infrastructure projects that have begun during this time period. Information from staff says there were none at this point. The next page is the list of private development projects, and again, staff has reported none have begun during this reporting period. The next page then is the current budget of the project plan, which was approved when the TIF was created, that lists different public infrastructure projects that are planned to take place during the period of the TIF. And this totals a little over $7 million of public infrastructure projects. The next page is a comparison of the budget versus expenditures. Again, there were no expenditures for projects other than for administration costs that totaled a little over $14,000 during this time period. Next page is the summary of the TIF fund that shows obviously a beginning balance of December 20th of zero. The revenues are the DC-EDC loan of $150,000 and the advance from the DC-EDC of $14,000 plus or a total of $164,465.16. The expenditures are the administration costs of the $14,465.16, leaving an ending fund balance then of the $150,000 advance from the DC-EDC. The next page summarizes the annual report. Item number 1, again, is the total revenue. Item number 2 is total expenditures. Item number 3, there was no advances or no bonds issued. Item number 4 shows the change in value in the TIF fund. The taxable value in 2017 is a little over $61 million versus the base value of about $57 million, or a captured appraised value of a little bit over $4 million. Then using the City of Duncanville's contribution to the TIF fund of 100% of your tax rate yields then a contribution to the TIF fund of about $28,500 to date. So that is the first annual report that would be submitted to the Comptroller's office.
And I would just like to speak in regards real quickly to the revenues in terms of the $150,000 loan from the DC-EDC. That was approved last year, if you remember right, and this was an item that was discussed multiple times with the council throughout the budget process. We will be bringing an official agreement between the two boards back to City Council for consideration here at a later date here in the next month. So I just wanted to clarify that to you. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, there's several lines that are coming on. I would like to make a comment about something said earlier. This is a $150,000 loan. You can't start this thing up and get it rolling with zero money. So the 150 was loaned. I heard your figures like 14,000 has been spent out of that amount, but it takes a while before the thing gets cranked up and your revenues start to come in.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's all about.
That is correct.
Exactly.
Okay. Councilwoman Jameson?
Yes. First of all, we were told repeatedly that that was self-funding, that, you know, we were never told that we had to seed it and loan money and all that, never. Okay, and I don't care if other cities or other entities do it, because we have loans and things going all over. We've got some other issues here in Duncanville on money that we fronted, an organization that has been very difficult. And my second question is, so this $150,000, it was voted on by the EDE, the Economic Development Board, but it did not come before us.
That's just what I said a minute ago, Ms. Jameson, that an agreement, an official agreement for final approval will come before City Council. That is correct.
So the money hasn't been moved?
It hasn't officially been moved. However, in the budget process, if you remember right, it was discussed throughout the budget process, and when you all voted on it in the budget process, that $150,000 was preliminary included in that amount.
Well,
it
should have been pulled out, and it should have been something that was discussed, because if there's money that is approved by the Economic Development Board, then we should vote on it and shouldn't be buried in a budget, because I don't recall it. And, you know, those funds are separate, really, and they should be something that we talk about. You know, and my understanding of this was that it was like, no, you know, we didn't have to worry about it because all this money was going to pour in, and
you know, you can say that you need seed money or whatever, but, you know, sometimes you have to wait before you start spending. You just do. And, you know, to me, that's what should have been done, is that we should have seen, because obviously if we think all this revenue is going to come in, we should wait until it starts coming in and then start spending it. You know, I really don't want it to take tax dollars and guesstimate and start spending. I think that we should see that revenue come in, and
Any project or any expenditure for any project would have to go in front of the TIF board, and then would also have to go in front of city council before any funds were spent.
well, I understand, but the loan from, which is something that we've kind of talked about, a loan from the Economic Development Board. And that was kind of what we've been talking about before, that we need to be transparent and to know where the money's going and when we make loans and borrow, and you know, and not stuck in a budget somewhere, because there were, you know, a tremendous amount that we were looking at during that time. I don't recall it at all, and this is something that would have been significant to me, because this is my district, and you know, taxpayers have been told that the money was all coming from the taxes that were taken from this district and this TIF district. And so to make that loan, and it's just now coming to us. And it hasn't even been set up in all of the interest rates and all that. I have an issue with that. Thank you.
City Manager.
Councilmember Jameson, I would like to point out that we did talk about the idea of seed money. When we first discussed the idea of a TIF, I remember specifically the council asking then how the projects would get funded. And what we talked about was at least 3 different ways that a TIF can fund projects, and have been done in different ways by different TIFs. One way is a pay-as-you-go, and as the money comes into the TIF, once it accumulates a certain amount, then you would have some money to provide for projects. A second way is some TIFs have issued debt up front with the idea of being able to put a significant amount of money into projects and then pay off the debt based on the income expected to be generated by the TIF. But a third option that I recall that we specifically talked about was the idea of seed money up front as a loan from either the general fund or from the EDC to be able to provide some funding up front, knowing that it would take a couple of years for the increment to build up, but allowing some money then to be immediately available for projects should they come up. So I know we talked about that, and I know it's been some time since we began talking about the idea of a TIF, but I know that we did specifically talk about the different ways.
But when was it voted on by the Economic Development Board?
As Jessica said, when we were discussing the budget, and when the budgets came before the City Council, we did specifically talk about at that point that the EDC was setting aside $150,000 in their budget for a loan to the TIF. And then when the council approved all of the budgets, that was approved. I want to see an agreement between the TIF board and the DEDC that specifically talks about the term of that loan, when it will get paid back, and how it will get paid back, because I think it's important that we have some document that memorializes that, so that it's not just based on people's memory that it was a loan, but that we actually have a document that delineates that, and that is approved by the council, and that's what Jessica is talking about.
But my question is, when was it voted on?
By the DCEDC, that was in July, when they discussed and approved their budget before it went to City Council for consideration through the budget process, and
So
then
it
you
was
approved
in their
it.
budget. It wasn't a specific item on the side.
It was in their budget, and then also during the budget process, the 2 budget workshops that were held, it was specifically
Talking
identified.
about EDC.
Yes, ma'am.
Not council.
Yes, ma'am. It is
When did
included
the
in
EDC
July.
vote on it?
In July, it was approved for fiscal year 18.
The EDC board voted on it.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess I'm confused why it didn't come before us.
It was approved by the council as part of the budgets. When you approve the budgets, you're approving the EDC's budget as well, and we did specifically mention that $150,000 in there as a line item in the EDC budget when we were talking about the EDC's proposed FY18 budget.
Are you? Yes, okay. Councilwoman Thomas?
Yes, Mayor. I forgot my original question because I'm so on this, but I will lend my memory. I do specifically remember talking about this in the budget. I do specifically remember them talking about the $150,000 as we went over the EDC budget, and they asked the council, and it was a consensus among us that we would approve of this in the budget. I specifically remember that. And I'm sorry I can't remember my other one because I'm such, and that's easy to determine before we start disparaging the staff members about doing things under the cover. We should make an effort to ask and get to the information that is
Point of order.
that is out there. So when
Go ahead.
So when you say that this wasn't brought out and that it's being hidden, then that, I think, speaks to the staff as saying they're trying to slip one in on us. But I do specifically remember it being discussed. And you can poll some of us on the council and ask us if we remembered it, and I would have, lent my memory to that issue. And so, Mayor, I moved that we pass a resolution approving the Tax Increment Financing District Reinvestment Zone Annual Report.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number I is to consider a resolution appointing additional members to the Duncanville Logo Design Advisory Committee.
Mayor and council, last meeting you appointed a advisory committee to work with citizens to look at redesigning the city's new logo. At that time, you named 5 members to the committee. Councilmember Dotson and Councilmember Thomas were not here at that meeting, and so they have both submitted names for consideration to add to that committee. Councilmember Dotson has suggested adding Pat Weaver, and Councilmember Thomas has suggested adding Ben Carlton to that committee.
Would you read the full? Do you have the full list of the committee?
And the other members that have been appointed to the committee are Gail Sliger, Buddy Shepard, Sharon Carger, Linda Lydia, and Sonia Pritchard-Smith.
Okay, you've heard the names. Is there a motion for the appointment?
Move approval.
And for a point's clarification, that would include Pat Weaver and Ben Carlton as the 2 members that you desire to approve.
Okay, there's a motion for approval and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number J is to take any necessary action as a result of the executive session. There was no action in the
No action
executive session,
requested.
so that was taken care of. Item number 6 are staff reports, and the first one is to receive the fire department quarterly report.
Good
Good evening, council, mayor, city manager. Thank you for having the fire department give our fourth quarter report. We'll go ahead and get started. One thing I'm very happy with is that we finally have full staffing in the fire department. I have all 55 of our guys staffed, which is a great accomplishment for us. My assistant chief, Greg Chase, and I worked very diligently to make sure we had these testing out there so we could get us a full house. I'm very proud that we have a full house now. Our last individual we just hired, his name is Eric Diaz. He was hired on November the 27th of 2017, and he is currently in training and orientation with the fire department. Very shortly, he'll be able to account for staffing in the fire department. We also just had a paramedic graduation Friday on the 12th. I had 4 of our paramedics graduate from El Centro College, so we added 4 paramedics to our staff to be able to ride our ambulances. We also have 4 that are attending paramedic school over in DeSoto's Fire Training Center, and they should be available to graduate in May, so we can get another 4 in our staffing, so we'll have a full house of our full complement of paramedics. Firehouse Magazine is a internationally recognized magazine, and we had several of our members that were recognized in that magazine. One of them was for a award they received for an individual who was in cardiac arrest when they arrived and wound up saving that young individual. Our paramedics that were on that call were Micah Shaw, Brent Neighbors, Pat Stubbs, and James Leary and Jason Wigginton, and they had an honorable mention in Firehouse Magazine. Also, Pam McAllister, our inspector, she's very instrumental in the success of several programs in the department. She is very big on our smoke detector installation program, and also she's instrumental in the fire safety calendar contest that we perform every year. Also, Mike Ryan, our EMS chief, he is a state coordinator, and he came in and taught all of our paramedics advanced cardiac life support, basic life support, and pediatric advanced life support recertification. Generally, those classes would have cost the city about $200 a man for them to be able to be certified again. So using our internal resources, we were able to save about $31,000 by getting all of our paramedics recertified on those card-carrying classes. So that's a big plus and a big check on Mike Ryan, our EMS division chief. He also has worked closely with the City of DeSoto in reciprocal training. They provide training for us, and we provide training for them. So it's a good partnership with the fire departments to get everybody up and trained on these card programs and in some of our command classes. Our new Quint is sitting down there in the house. We're in the middle of outfitting that Quint and training. We have to provide training for each one of the individuals on the actual chassis operation of the Quint, and also the aerial. The aerial is a little bit different than the one we have. We currently have a 75-foot aerial, and this is a 107-foot aerial. It's a little bit different, a little bit more modern, so they have to all receive training on that apparatus. Then we'll have to have them go out and practice driving it, make sure they understand the clearances on the turns on those vehicles, because they have very wide clearance that they have to have. So we'll take our guys and put them through a thorough training before we put that vehicle into service. With that being said, I'd like to thank Greg Chase, my assistant chief, and engineer Steve Hadley. He put a lot of time and energy and work into designing the specs for that engine so that it works good for Duncanville. And I was very proud of Greg because a lot of his innovations on that truck, some other cities across the nation are using some of his innovations that he put on those trucks. So I got a pretty good little design engineer for some of these fire trucks working for us. Also, we're going to extend an invitation to all the council members to come out on February the 8th. And that's where we're going to have the invocation for that vehicle. And we'll take it outside, and we'll go out there and we'll throw a little water on it, dry it off, and then my firefighters will push that vehicle into fire station indicating that it's ready for service. So we'll welcome y'all come out on that day. We'll get y'all some invitations to come do that little ceremony. Also, our regional partners with Lancaster, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill, we go out and we use training out there at night so we can have all of our units used to how we work together and train together and communicate together and make sure that our SOPs and everything are all coordinating with all four of the cities. Again, as we already heard, Tanya Hunter received recognition at the City of Dallas's City Council meeting on December the 13th. Big turnout, and we're real proud of Tanya Hunter's accomplishments for the EOC in Dallas. Also, we received a emergency management grant, a performance grant of $32,528.35, which helps to reimburse a portion of our emergency management for the city. And we also, as Tanya mentioned, we try to have quarterly exercises and scenarios, and we did, the last one was over in Lancaster, and all four of the cities participated in a winter weather scenario. Also, we've been working real hard to make sure that all of our operations on the fire ground are very, very, very safe. And one way we do that is through our blue card operations, and we sent 3 of our firefighters to this blue card training so that they can come back and train our firefighters. And it's basically to improve communications and fire safety out on the scene. We also have one of our firefighters, Paul Stouffer. He was recognized by MedStar. He just happened to be at a Alliance Air Show, and the security came out and was calling for paramedics. And when lo and behold, they had a guy there who was had a cardiac arrest, and there's that victim right there that Paul Stouffer assisted in saving his life. So chalk up another one for the Duncanville EMS and saving a life. One of the things I'm mostly proud of in our Fire Prevention Bureau and Education is they're going out, and we received grants for smoke alarms. And we started off with District 1. As you can see, we knocked on 72 doors, made contact with 42 of the residents. We installed 55 smoke alarms, replaced 6 batteries and 8 refusals in District 1. Then District 5, we went in October. We knocked on 81 doors, made contact with 44 residents, installed 74 smoke alarms, replaced 3 batteries, and had 10 refusals. So the remaining districts, we're going to go ahead and get them scheduled in 2018 and do the exact same program in the other 3 districts. Our fourth quarter stats for calls for service, we had 1,540 calls for service. 32 of those were fire related. We had 14 building fires. Other related calls for service were 363. Our EMS call for services was most of our calls, 1,131. And then my inspector and fire marshal did 321 inspections. For the year, we had 7,260 total calls for service. Of those, 142 were fire-related. Building fires, 57. Other related calls for service was 1,600. EMS calls for service, which again is the overwhelming part of our business, 5,461 calls. And then we did through the year, we did 1,184 building inspections. And that's all for my report for tonight. Do I have any questions?
Chief, 2 questions.
Shoot, Mary.
Number 1, will that new quint at 107 foot put a man on top of the Hilton?
Yes, that's the whole purpose in getting that type of tower is for a lot of the multi-story hotels that we have, and also it's to get reach in our high school.
And second question, if we come out to this dedication of the new quint, are we going to have to wash it like we did the last time?
Well, Mayor, that's kind of the idea. It's the tradition for our council people to come in and, indoctrinate that vehicle, soap it up a little bit, wash it down, wipe it up, and then I'll leave it up to my firemen to push that baby back up into the bay, ready for service.
Councilman LeBlanc? Okay, yes. Will it be warm?
I'll have to talk to Tanya about that.
Councilman LeBlanc?
Chief Rhodey, I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you, and also congratulations. Thank you for the staffing. It is much appreciated to know that the department is fully staffed, and thank you for your effort. Assistant Chief, thank you for all you did. Personnel, just thank you for making sure that happened. And also a statement of gratitude for the cost savings that you did regarding the training. I think that was an excellent use of resources in order to save the taxpayer some money. So again, thank you for that.
Yeah, I want to ditto that with Greg Chase. He's the one that really pushed on a lot of the efforts to get the hiring of our people. Okay. And with all my effort, it was a lot of Greg, so I don't want to take a lot of the credit that he did a lot of the work.
Well, thank you, Chase. I appreciate you. And if you stand by me, I'll wash that truck.
If it's warm, we'll give you a fur coat.
Item number B is to receive the police department quarterly report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mark Lavigny. I'm the Assistant Police Chief for the Duncanville Police Department. I appreciate the opportunity of sharing this report with you tonight. What I'd like to highlight first is we do have some folks in the pipe coming. All these folks that you see up here are at various stages of their training before they get to the police department. Actually, the last two are currently in field training. Stephanie Straw and Darren Adams, they're actually due to graduate this Friday. There was a typo there. And we're getting outstanding reports on those two individuals, and we expect good things from them. Trevin Green was hired a little bit after them, but he's also in the Regional Police Academy, and we're hearing outstanding things from him as well, and we look for good things as he progresses through his training. The last two individuals, Brian Lauer and Matthew Carter, there were lateral transfers to our department from other departments. And again, they're currently in field training. And we hope to be able to cut them loose as independent officers sometime in February. That 9 vacant police officer positions has changed. It's now 10 because of the retirement. This report was originally scheduled to be provided to you in December, and in late December, Assistant Chief Brian Hurd retired, and that made us to 10. Some of the accomplishments that we've had during this quarter at the police department was we were able to send 2 of our new sergeants to the month-long training at the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration, which is located in Plano, Texas. And they were able to successfully complete that training. That's a big deal for them. Back in October, we had an opportunity through the Drug Enforcement Administration to bring in drugs, and we were able to get 360 pounds of unused or out-of-date medications to be properly disposed of by the DEA. So our citizens were able to bring those to us so they weren't causing problems out in the community. Some of the training, Officer Doug Sisk was able to attend the crime prevention through environmental design and nuisance abatement training, which was put on at the Caruth Police Institute in Dallas. And it was a 2-day training, and after the first day, Doug was asked to come up and be part of the panel because he knew so much. So that's a great reflection on our department and our city. Officer Brian Shipman was recognized for his outstanding efforts in actually saving a life. He drove up on a major accident scene, and he found a female driver unconscious and not breathing. He quickly went into action, and by the time the paramedics got there, she was regaining consciousness and was released to her parents on scene. That's outstanding work. A couple of our civilian employees, Stacy Trevino and Lucia Beavers, were recognized for their efforts in updating some of the signage in the police department lobby. And I think everyone would agree that looks very professional, and so their efforts were very appreciated. We rotate cars out of our fleet, out of our patrol fleet every year on a rotating basis. And what we're able to do with the Citizens on Patrol vehicles is as we rotated some of the older cars out of our patrol fleet, we're able to give them some of those cars to help update those cars that were getting worn by the Citizens on Patrol. So we kind of took them out of patrol and put them in Citizens on Patrol fleet. The Citizen Police Academy number 55 was held in November, and they had a graduation actually in November. So it's a group of people there that was educated throughout their training on what we do in the police department and how they can help us. And I think it helps us outreach to the community as we do that. So just a plug, we're currently taking applications for the spring 2018 Citizens Police Academy. So we take residents and business owners or people that work in the city of Duncanville. Back in December, the Santa Cop program, we had two organizations, Skyward Bound Ranch Charity and Diamond Wishes, gave over 500 toys to the Santa Cop program, which again turned out to be a successful drive this last Christmas. Over this period, we've had 9 use of force incidents. All were within policy. We had 1 vehicle pursuit, was within policy. There was a squad car damaged by the suspect trying to flee, the officers trying to stop them. We had 1 citizen complaint, and actually that was derived from an officer that was at an in-fault accident, and the officer received discipline. Department activity continued in the community. In August, we had 6 meetings where 230 plus participants were present. In September, again, 6 meetings with over 445 participants. In October, 13 meetings and nearly 3,000 participants. Those numbers reflect community engagements initiated by the entire department, but especially by Doug Sisk, the Crime Prevention Relations Officer, through neighborhood crime watch groups, homeowners associations, and business watches. If anyone is interested in creating one of these, they can contact Officer Doug Sisk at that number, 972-780-5027. And our Crime One stats for this period, year to date, as reflected up there, we had a 67% decrease in murder and homicide. Our involuntary manslaughter stayed flat at 0. We had a 69% increase in sexual assault. Now, as we go through these percentages, I do want to point out it's very important to pay particular attention to the raw numbers. We can have a vast amount of sway in the percentages because our numbers are actually so low. So just realize that that 69% was an increase in 9 in that same reporting period. We had a 4% reduction in robberies, a 14% increase in aggravated assaults, a 60% increase in nighttime burglaries. At daytime, that was a 43% increase, and the 24% increase were unknown. In other words, we get there and they just give us a window and we have to say, okay, it occurred between this time and that time, and we can't make a determination whether it was at night or in the daytime. So the total commercial burglary was up 38%, but that was only 23 offenses. Burglary of residence at nighttime, up 56%, but only 5 offenses. In the daytime, we were actually down 30%, which was a negative 19 offenses. Unknown again, down 26%, or 9 offenses. So the total residential burglary was down 21% for this reporting period. Motor vehicle burglaries were down 18%. Burglary coin ops was up 150%, but you look, that went from 2 to 5. So we had an increase of 3. Total burglary was actually down 12%. Felony theft was down 16%. Misdemeanor theft was down 18%. And the total theft was down an overall 18%. Unauthorized use of motor vehicles, stolen vehicles in other words, was up 13% or 17 offenses, and the grand total for the crime during this reporting period was down 9%. And that is the end of this report, and I'll entertain any questions.
Councilwoman Jameson?
What is the training school that police officers go through?
You mean the basic police academy?
Mm-hmm.
Are you asking the ones we use?
Do we use more than one?
We will typically use a regional police academy, and that's located at the North Central Texas COG, Council of Governments.
Mm-hmm.
And we will use the Dallas County Sheriff's Office as a basic training facility.
Okay, what about using the community college system? Because they offer one, I understand, in Cedar Valley.
Well, when we send our employees out that we hire, we send them to these academies that we have some experience with. Now, that's not to say if somebody comes to us and they're pre-certified from community college, that we won't entertain hiring them and put them straight into field training. We have to evaluate what we feel like we know in a interview session, and if we feel like they're a good candidate, but we may not feel comfortable with them, that they retained everything they may have learned at any police academy, then we may go ahead and send them back through an academy. If we think that, on the other hand, that they have a good grasp on the various different things you would learn in an academy, then we certainly have the option, and we have done this before, we put them right on the streets into the FTO program.
Okay, is there a policy or a book that you use that would have that criteria? I say that because I heard from some citizens that that may be one of the reasons why we have difficulties, because I understood that some of the surrounding cities took candidates from the community college,
Okay.
Cedar Valley, and that we didn't.
Well, there's nothing codified anywhere that says we won't, but what I will tell you is, just to clarify, we will take individuals that are pre-certified in other academies, but once we get them into the interview process, we're going to gauge them on how well we believe they have a grasp on what they would have learned in the police academy. If they have a good grasp on it, we put them straight into field training. If we feel like they're a good applicant, but they don't maybe have a good grasp, maybe it's been a while, or whatever the case may be, we certainly will retain the, I guess, we'll send them to another academy.
Okay, so we have hired in the past people who have not gone to COG or the Dallas Sheriff's training?
We just hired Brian Lauer. He went to the Dallas Police Department Academy.
The Dallas Police Department, okay. Well, I just thought that, I didn't know if you had a manual or it was some sort of policy or whatever that maybe we needed to look at it since we're struggling.
Again, and I don't know where that certainly would have come from, or maybe if it was an assumption that somebody had. We do typically, if we hire somebody and they don't have that certification, we will send them to Regional Police Academy at COG or the Dallas Sheriff's Office.
If they haven't had any training?
If they hadn't had any training.
Okay.
If they come to us and they have been pre-certified at a basic academy at anywhere else in the state of Texas, because T. Cole, manages that and oversees that, then we will, on our own in the interview process, determine what it is. Do we feel strongly that they have a good grasp on what they're doing? If they do, and what they retained. If they do, then we'll put them straight into field training. It's not just because you went to this academy that is not one of the two that we send new hires with no experience to, that we're not going to just, take that into account.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that because I thought, my goodness, if you'd come through the training at Cedar Valley and you were told, oh no, You need to go
Well,
to
it shows
hours.
great initiative. I mean, for somebody not to be sponsored by a police department, and to, in a lot of cases, spend their own money in that case, and go and put themselves through the academy, shows a lot of initiative. I think that says a lot about an individual.
Right.
So if they come to us, again, we just have to evaluate what we feel like they know.
And I just heard the fire department say that they had someone that went through Mountain View. They do the fire fighters at Mountain View, so.
And we've gone out to several job fairs. Matter of fact, I just spoke with a young lady that used to work as a dispatcher for the Duncanville Police Department many years ago, while it was still here. And she actually works out there. And I spoke to her within the last week. We've been out to many job fairs at one of the community colleges. And matter of fact, our conversation, I said, hey, we're having a test. And by the way, we are having a test January 29th. January 27th. But in order to be able to get a seat at that test, people interested need to go onto Duncanville's website and press on a button, a letter or an intent to test. They have to do that by January 19th at 3 p.m. So if somebody's looking to work for a great organization, then we encourage them to do that, and we'll put them through the academy if they're not already certified. If they are certified by one of the community colleges, we'll evaluate what they know.
Maybe we should put that on the front page of the city website.
I think it is.
It is, okay.
It is.
And anywhere else?
It's on Indeed. It's in the Texas Police Chief's website. It's on several different websites. Again, we've reached out to several different community colleges and let them know. We're trying various things. I know the last test, we spent almost $4,000 on radio advertisement. And we tried to trace that and to see what kind of bang we got for our buck, and we hardly got anything.
Really?
So we're really trying to explore different avenues to try to maximize the people that are showing up for these tests, because we realize we've got to get people in there to pass the test. We've got to get them going, and we've got to get fully staffed.
Cedar Valley might be a good opportunity then, since
It certainly may be.
they're trying to find their life
Sure.
and what they're going to do, then be a policeman.
Like I say, we've had talks with them, and we're open to those folks coming out if they've gotten their certification from Cedar Valley, or if they don't have their certification, we'll put them through the academy.
Good. That's great. Thank you.
Councilman Swart.
Chief Lavigny, I've been gone most of the month of December, and I wasn't here when you got promoted. I want to congratulate you on your promotion to
Thank you.
assistant chief.
I appreciate that.
I know
I've been with the department for almost 25 years, and so, it's been a while in coming, and I just appreciate the opportunity.
We're glad to have you and glad you got promoted.
Thanks, sir.
Councilman Rutherford.
Just a question on the shortage. You indicate we're 10 short now, and we've got 5 that are
Yes, sir.
almost.
And
Does
you
that,
can't, those 5 don't count to the 10.
they don't 5. So we're still, when they come, we'll still be 10 short.
Yeah, but anything we're getting,
Okay.
and quite honestly, and I don't mean to paint a worse picture, but effectively, we've got 2 people that are deployed on long-term military deployments. We've got another person going later on in the month, or in February. But I'll tell you, the folks that we do have that are still at the police department are some of the greatest people that you will ever come across. They will work for you. Ben Shipman, I mean, it's what we do. Gets on an accident scene and brings somebody back to life. So we appreciate your support. We're doing the best we can. We're trying to think outside the box. Anything you guys can do to help us along the way, we're certainly open to it. If you have suggestions, we're open to it.
Mayor and Council, we have not mentioned that we interviewed a candidate last week who has just passed all of the requirements to be a police officer, and we have another interview coming up next week. So we've not included those 2 individuals in that vacancy because they're not officially hired.
Chief, there's a perception on the streets that we're short of police officers on the street. That's not really true, is it?
Well, we're short. We would like to be staffed better. I think our response time is still very good. We've got folks that are very dedicated, and we do have people out on the street. If you call us, we'll come. It's not as many as we would like. We can't be as proactive as we would like, but if there's somebody out there that's worried about that we're not coming, then they don't need to worry about that.
Thank you.
Council, I can assure you that our vacancies does not impact the level of service that we're going to provide to our citizens. When you call, we're going to respond. We have an obligation to this community to provide a certain level of service, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And our supervisors are going to ensure that when you call, we have somebody coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our final report tonight will be our monthly financial report as of November 30, 2017.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Richard Summerlin, Finance Director. And we'll just jump right in to our report. This report is of the end of November. And at the end of November, that's 2 months into our fiscal year. So we expect our benchmark to be at about 17% of our budget for our revenues and expenditures. If we look at our general fund, we ended November with $5.7 million, which is 69 days of operations, and that's based on the 2018 adopted budget. So that's about 6 days or $472,000 short of our benchmark 75-day reserve. And that's really a result of us incurring normal expenditures during a time when we have very little revenue coming in. Property taxes, they're primarily come in during the months of December and January, so there were very little property taxes paid during those months. And our franchise fee revenues are received on a quarterly basis, so none of those revenues will show up until after we end the first quarter. And then our sales tax we received is 2 months in arrears, so our October sales tax will be the first one, and that'll show up in December. So if we look at our graph that we always do the purple line here, which is our budget, assuming that it's incurred on equal amounts throughout the year. And then this blue line coming up here is our 3-year average. And the 2 red dots here in this line represents the 2 months that we've had. So you can see that our revenues are very little for these first 2 months. And if you look at that from the standpoint of property tax, again, same thing on all of these graphs. You'll see that we're tracking right along that normal revenue curve. We look at expenditures. We started out a little bit high. We had quite a few expenditures in October, and then for November, those expenditures came down well below that 3-year trend line. Then we look at the utility fund. We've got an ending unreserved fund balance of $7.2 million. That's 141 days of operations, and that's about $4.2 million in excess of our 60-day fund balance target. Again, utility solid waste revenues are 1 month in arrears, so November usage is billed in December, and so there's only 1 month of revenues at present that we can look at.
Richard, will that change when we get all of the new water meters, the electronic ones?
There's a possibility that we may be able to change that some in terms of our billing. Right now, you know, the meter read process of going through all the city, it takes several weeks to complete that. And so we have everything staggered out because of gathering all that information, reviewing it, because we have quite a few parameters that we go through For instance, if a reading's above or below 5%, we go back and we reread that meter to ensure that we didn't make a mistake and that it's accurate. And so some of those things would be eliminated with the smart meters when we are able to implement those. To what degree we may be able to get that more closer to real time, I can't answer until we get there, but certainly there'll be an improvement and there won't be as much lag. So again, the revenues for the first 2 months plotted out here on the red lines, just following right along what that 3-year average looks like. And then expenditures, we started out pretty well on target for October in terms of the trend line for the 3-year average, and then a little bit below in November. And then this slide shows all of our Innovation Fund projects. Essentially, we've completed the top one, the Park Master Plan, and we also done a transfer over of the $1 million for the pre-funding of the 2018 pavement management system. And then all the other projects are still in progress. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Seeing none, that completes our agenda tonight, so we stand adjourned at 9:42.